Chapter 1083. After the two of them were sent flying, it was fortunate that the wood spirit had transformed into a tree and caught them in time, pulling them back together. At this time, Mu Yu's injury was also very bad. The white ape demon king's wound that had just healed split open again. Xiao Shui also used his small claws to pull the white ape demon king's ears, so that he would not be thrown away. Let me think, the best way is to wait for me to recover and kill these two bastards with one punch. Ah, little one, my ears are about to be torn off. The white ape demon king said angrily. Your whole body is bound by the other party's soul binding. It will take you an hour to get rid of this power with my help. An hour is enough for them to kill you. Xiao Shui still grabbed the white ape demon king's ears, and did not dare to let go. Who knew what would happen next? What the hell, old hairy monkey, you always fail to do anything right. Mu Yu pulled the white ape demon king and dodged another white light. Now it was impossible to count on the white ape demon king to deal with these two people from the third palace. He could only think of another way. Although Mu Yu had powerful array techniques and swordsmanship, these cards made him almost invincible in the face of a crossing tribulation stage cultivator. But in the face of a great ascension stage expert with a domain ability, he was helpless. Great ascension stage experts had a domain ability. He was very clear about what this domain meant. This time, it was not like when he was in the gambling city. At the gambling city, at least a few top crossing tribulation stage experts worked together to deal with a great ascension stage expert. At this time, he was carrying a crippled white ape demon king and facing the pursuit of two great ascension stage experts at the same time. It was almost a huge dilemma. Han Wuxiang and the palace guard had already surrounded Mu Yu. You two still want to fight like cornered beasts? Han Wuxiang sneered. The two domain auras sealed off the area, and white soul power surrounded the two of them. They looked at Mu Yu with eyes full of ridicule. In their eyes, Mu Yu was just a crossing calamity stage cultivator. Now that Mu Yu didn't have the exuberant vitality of the entire city, he was already a turtle in a jar facing the two of them. Damn it, this is going to be troublesome. Mu Yu felt his heart sinking. The white ape demon king could not be counted on, but Mu Yu still had a trump card, which was his life and death in the blink of an eye. This was the only domain ability that he could use at present, but there were too many restrictions on this domain ability. Not to mention that he needed to consume a lot of spiritual power, because he himself was not a master of the Deshang stage. It was impossible to use this domain ability accurately. Unless the opposite person stood in place and stared at him, it was impossible to hit the other party. The life and death in the blink of an eye domain ability was too powerful, causing it to move very slowly. Even a master of the Deshang stage could dodge it. Use the white ape demon king. He is a master of the Deshang stage and knows how to help you use your domain ability. Gomang's voice sounded in Mu Yu's mind. Mu Yu shouted, Old hairy monkey, do you know how to help me use my domain ability? The white ape demon king was stunned and said, What domain ability? I can't even raise my hand now, how can I use my domain ability? Not using your domain ability, but using my domain ability. I am not a master of the Deshang stage, so I don't fully understand the rules of the domain. I can't completely control this ability alone. You need to help me. Mu Yu quickly explained. What domain do you have? Oh yes, Gomang's eyes have a problem with blinking, how can he help you? The white ape demon king had seen Gomang before and knew the identity of Mu Yu's body, so he immediately responded. Shouldn't I be the one asking you this? Mu Yu felt that he had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to come and save this unreliable guy. He was not a master of the Deshang stage, so he didn't know how to use his life and death ability correctly. He asked the white ape demon king in the blink of an eye, and this guy's mouth popped out such a sentence. The white ape demon king muttered a few words, and his eyes lit up. That's right, you are not a master of the Deshang stage, so you are blind when using your domain ability. When you use your domain ability, you can use it on me and use it through my domain. This should reduce the burden of using your domain ability. Good. Cut the crap, we don't have much chance. Mu Yu held back from scolding the White Ape Demon King's evaluation of him being blind. His whole body's spiritual energy had returned to his eyes. At the same time, his left eye glowed with exuberant vitality, and his right eye flashed with a dark, inky light. The aura of his domain instantly covered the area. The White Ape Demon King put his hand on Mu Yu's back, and Mu Yu's domain ability was immediately guided to the White Ape Demon King. The powerful coercion of the domain was dispersed by the White Ape Demon King, and the spiritual energy was also extracted from the White Ape Demon King's body. This made it easier for Mu Yu to use this domain. On the opposite side, Han Wuxiang and the palace captain discovered that Mu Yu's body was also exuding the aura of the Deshang stage. They were shocked, but then they sneered. I forgot that you have Gomong in your body. What a pity you, a man of the crossing calamity stage, want to use the domain of the Deshang stage in front of us. It's simply showing off in front of an expert. Soul Technique Luoyin, Thousand Lanterns Demonic Seal. Soul Technique Luoyin, Heaven-Conquering Tyrant Roar. From the previous fight with Mu Yu, the Threefold Palace already knew that they could not underestimate Mu Yu. Therefore, Han Wuxiang and the palace captain directly used their domain ability, intending to end the battle quickly and not give Mu Yu any chance to resist. White soul beads surrounded the two of them. Suddenly, the soul beads exploded, forming little white soul lamps. Each soul lamp sealed a white soul, making the soul lamps look extremely strange. There were thousands of soul lamps in the air, and each soul lamp had a strong fluctuation of soul power, as if a terrifying force was about to erupt at any time. As for the palace captain who had lost an arm, his soul orb transformed into an indestructible white light that enveloped the entire void. It was as if the void had been covered with a layer of hard armor. At the same time, there were waves of whistling sounds that reverberated in the surroundings. Sound waves rolled in from all directions. Buzz. A chant came from the sky, as if countless ripples were spreading out, and a tyrannical wave swept out with white soul power, covering Mu Yu's surroundings, cutting off Mu Yu's escape route. The soul lamps gradually lit up with white light, and white souls jumped out of the soul lamps, trying to grab Mu Yu. Mu Yu calmly looked at the oncoming sound waves and soul lamp. He did not dare to be careless, because even if he could use the domain of the Great Vehicle Stage, he was still not a real Great Vehicle Stage self-cultivator, not to mention that there were two Great Vehicle Stage cultivators in front of him. A black beam of light shot out from Mu Yu's right eye. That black beam of light was incomparably sinister, like a black hole that could devour everything in the world. Nothing could break free from this black beam of light, let alone resist it. It caused the hearts of everyone to palpitate. The black light went straight to the floating souls, shattering the sound waves of the Futian Ba'in, and broke free from the seal of the Futian Ba'in, piercing a hole in the sky, and a destructive aura sputtered violently in all directions. Mu Yu's face turned pale. In order to break the seal of the two Great Vehicle Stage cultivators, he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Although the pressure was shared by the White Ape Demon King, it was still extremely strenuous. However, he forced himself to calm down, and the shadow sword light soared into the sky, merging into the sky, and a vortex appeared in the sky, echoing with the sword light. The sword light was biting cold, like a pool of autumn water, causing the whole sky to tremble. Whoosh! Mu Yu's black light shrouded the sword chi, and even the green sword light was turned into a black sword light. The sword light was like the death brilliance of hell, which could destroy everything in the world, causing the surrounding air to explode and boil, and everyone felt that their breathing had stopped for a beat. What the hell is this? The White Ape Demon King was also shocked to see Mu Yu's sword light. At this time, Mu Yu's shadow sword light had merged life and death, and in the blink of an eye, the sword light had changed, as if the heavenly sword had become the Grim Reaper's weapon to harvest lives. Whoosh! The black sword light tore a hole in the seal of the Futian Bain, and even destroyed dozens of soul lamp. The sword light swept towards Hun Wuxiang and the palace captain, and countless cracks appeared in the sky, as if the whole void was about to collapse. How can he be so strong? Hun Wuxiang and the palace captain were shocked. Originally, they looked down on Mu Yu, but now, Mu Yu's black sword light was enough to pose a threat to them. Whoosh! Whoosh! Hun Wuxiang and the palace captain had already retreated, dodging Mu Yu's Grim Reaper's black sword light. The black sword light poured out and slashed the ground, causing the ground to explode. When the sand and trees came into contact with Mu Yu's black sword light, their vitality was directly devoured, and even the essence of the stones were sucked away, turning into a pile of dust. After the black sword light devoured the essence of the trees and sand on the ground, it became stronger and stronger. What a powerful sword light! The heavenly sword, you can actually use the heavenly sword to wield death. Gomang could not help but exclaim. As the owner of life and death in the blink of an eye, Gomang was very familiar with his ability. In the past, when he used it, he would directly devour the essence of all things through his eyes, extracting the vitality that was swept by the black sword light. However, when Mu Yu fused death with the sword light, it reached an extremely strange level. Mu Yu shrouded the death in the blink of an eye in the sword chi, and the burden on his body became much lighter. He was also a little surprised. Originally, he only wanted to control the death in his right eye more accurately, so he wanted to integrate death into the sky sword. He wanted to see if he could use the sky sword to control the power of death in his right eye. The result was unexpected. The sky sword integrated death into the sky sword, and it gave him a feeling of ease. No wonder eldest senior brother said that the heavenly sword is what we rely on. So that's what he meant. Mu Yu nodded thoughtfully. Back then, Qingyan had said that he did not like Rush's domain ability and that they relied on the heavenly sword. Now, he understood why Qingyan said that. Chapter 1084. Mu Yu held the Shadow Clone Sword in his hand. One of his eyes was black and the other was white. He fired a black sword ray toward Hun Wuxiang and the palace captain. With the white ape demon king sharing the burden of the pressure from the great vehicle stage, he could control the power of this domain for a short period of time. Boom! All of Hun Wuxiang's soul lamps lit up. Countless white souls formed an indestructible shield and blocked Mu Yu's black sword ray. The black sword ray began to devour the white soul's vitality. Countless sound waves blasted toward Mu Yu from all directions. Just as Mu Yu was about to swing his sword again, his heart skipped a beat. Because he had forcefully used life and death, he had consumed a large amount of spiritual energy in the blink of an eye. It was as if the spiritual energy in his body had been sucked dry. He could not use the sword again. Bang! Mu Yu was sent flying. In the end, he was still at a disadvantage. The combination of Hun Wuxiang and the palace lieutenant was really powerful. Even with life and death, he could not withstand the attacks of two great vehicle stages experts. It's over. Let's go. The white ape demon king also noticed the changes in Mu Yu's body. Although the combination of death and heaven sword was very powerful, Mu Yu still had to face the problem of not having enough cultivation. Being able to push back two great vehicle stages experts was already his limit. It was impossible for him to kill any one of them. Seeing that Hun Wuxiang and the palace lieutenant's domain abilities were about to hit him, Mu Yu could only forcefully withdraw the heaven sword. He tapped his foot and jumped out again. At the same time, he took out a bunch of pills to recover his spiritual energy. Run north. I've already sent a signal to Luan Feng. If I'm not wrong, she should be on her way. The white ape demon king quickly said. You guessed. Mu Yu's spiritual energy was depleted. It was good enough that he could use Mu Ling's cover to escape with all his might. Unfortunately, he had to bring along an unreliable person with him. He had to guess. Anyway, I was the one who told her to send Hai Dongqing back. She knows where Hai Dongqing is sealed. So, she should be heading north, White Ape Demon King said. Mu Yu quickly pondered for a moment before he headed east. The barrier that Mu Ling had formed behind him had already shattered inch by inch. Hun Wuxiang and the hall captain were getting closer and closer. Kid, do you have no sense of direction? The north side is over there. The White Ape Demon King cursed. You asked Luan Feng to send Hai Dongqing back. How could she get here so easily? The Danding sect is nearby. As long as we enter the Danding sect, we will be absolutely safe. Mu Yu said calmly. With Mu Yu's current crazy escape speed, as long as he persisted for half a quarter of an hour, after reaching the Pill Cauldron sect, the power of the opening cauldron would be enough to resist the pursuit of these two Deshang stage masters. If he went north to look for the Luan Feng, Mu Yu wasn't sure if the Luan Feng would coincidentally come to meet them. Danding sect? The Danding sect isn't a good place. It's too much of a bastard. White Ape Demon King remembered that when he first broke free from the seal, he relied on Mu Yu's teleportation jade pendant to escape from the Danding sect. At that time, he hadn't fully recovered his strength and was besieged by a group of people. His impression of the Danding sect was very bad. Little Commander was puzzled and asked, Old Hairy Monkey, why didn't Demon King Tianqian's cultivation reach the Deshang stage after breaking free from the seal? I remember that the Sea Demon King fought with the Ghost Realm child. Shouldn't you be brave and invincible after escaping from the Danding sect? White Ape Demon King snorted and said, Of course I was brave and invincible when I escaped from the Danding sect. However, Tianqian was the same as me. His inner core was damaged in the fight just now. He couldn't recover in time, so he couldn't exert the strength of a Deshang stage master. When it rains, it pours. If that wasn't the case, even if White Ape Demon King was plotted against, Tianqian would at least have the strength to fight against a Deshang stage level 3 palace master. In front of them was a towering mountain peak that pierced straight into the clouds. However, Mu Yu directly broke through the void with White Ape Demon King. With a boom, a huge hole was created in the mountain range that was a few thousand meters in diameter. The entire mountain began to rumble. The hall captain and Hun Wuxiang, who were chasing from behind, were even more straightforward. Their terrifying soul power cut through the air and instantly raised the entire mountain range to the ground. They were getting closer and closer. They had locked onto Mu Yu and White Ape Demon King's aura. It was very difficult to lose them. Old Hairy Monkey, lend me some blood. Mu Yu calmly superimposed formation patterns in his hands quickly. The formation patterns merged into the void, and the entire void shook violently as if a ripple of water had swept past. He grabbed White Ape Demon King's wound and rudely pulled out a pool of blood from White Ape Demon King's wound. At the same time, scarlet blood appeared in his hands. Stinky bastard, the little guy almost pulled my ear off, and you're still rubbing salt on my wound. Don't you know that it takes 100 days for an old man to recover from a serious injury? White Ape Demon King scolded angrily. He was very annoyed that a lot of blood had been taken. Shut up. The formation patterns in Mu Yu's hands quickly transformed. Under the effect of the formation patterns, the blood quickly condensed into the shadows of the other two White Ape Demon Kings and himself. They were exactly the same as their aura. This is the only way. Mu Yu's hand once again appeared with the poison that he had concocted from Deadwood Daddy. Since his cultivation had been promoted to the tribulation stage, he had basically rarely used poison. However, there were many poisons that were very useful, such as the flowing light, that he had liked to use the most in the past. Whoosh! The flowing light was covered by the 8 trigrams formation patterns and instantly dispersed behind them. The places where they passed by were directly detonated by the powerful formation patterns. The whole world seemed to be covered by a dazzling white light, as if the sun had exploded and swallowed everything. The flowing light was a kind of blinding poison. When it exploded, it was enough to produce a powerful light and poisonous fog. The stronger the spiritual power, the more powerful the effect. However, for a cultivator with a high cultivation level, during a battle, they did not rely on their eyes to see their opponent. They locked on to their opponent's aura more. You actually dare to use such a petty trick to make a fool of yourself? The palace captain sneered. Although he could not see Mu Yu for a while, he still knew the specific location of Mu Yu and the White Ape Demon King. Normally, it was impossible for them to escape. However, just as the palace captain and Han Wuxiang were about to catch Mu Yu and the White Ape Demon King, both of them suddenly frowned at the same time. This was because, in their perception, there were 2 Mu Yu and 2 White Ape Demon Kings. Moreover, they had split into 2 and fled in different directions. What's going on? The palace captain and Han Wuxiang stopped. Because the flowing light limited their vision, they did not notice which one was the real one. However, the aura of the 2 Mu Yu and the 2 White Ape Demon Kings was very real. Split up and chase. The palace guard made a prompt decision. They would not let these 2 people escape so easily. Mu Yu did not expect the flowing light to blind the 2 great vehicle stage cultivators. That was unrealistic. However, in the shocking light emitted by the flowing light just now, he used the formation technique to seal his and the White Ape Demon King's aura and blood into an illusory array. Then, 2 of him appeared and scattered in different directions, trapping the 2 great vehicle stage cultivators. They actually split up. Kid, you look like you're asking for a beating. I didn't expect you to be so smart. Come. Hurry up and squeeze more blood from my wound. Make more and run in different directions. When the White Ape Demon King saw that it was only the one-armed palace captain, he immediately volunteered to sacrifice more blood to make an illusory array. Old hairy monkey, are you retarded? If I can make more blood, why would I only make one? The speed of the illusory array over there will soon slow down. In a moment they will catch up. By then, we will know which one is the real one. We need to get rid of this one. Mu Yu ran for a distance again. Then, he stepped on the void with the tip of his foot. Ripples spread out, and the power of the domain covered his body again. You want to fight him head-on? The White Ape Demon King asked in surprise. Stop talking nonsense and help me. If we don't take this opportunity to kill him, he will catch up with us sooner or later. Mu Yu's eyes were shrouded in black and white light. The shadow clone sword appeared again. Good fellow, I like your bad temper. The White Ape Demon King quickly helped Mu Yu to draw away the power of the domain, helping Mu Yu to better control the power of the domain. The palace captain sneered, What? You don't have the strength to run anymore? I don't need to run after killing you. The light in Mu Yu's eyes became more and more vigorous. He had gradually recovered a bit of spiritual power. At this time, he could use the power of the domain on his sky sword in the blink of an eye. Although it was difficult, he had to fight. Otherwise, he would die without a doubt. Arrogant. With your little spiritual power, even if you have a strange black sword, so what? You are too naive. The palace captain sneered. White soul power rolled out again, intimidating Mu Yu. However, this time, Mu Yu's eyes did not shoot out Black Death aura. On the contrary, his left eye surged with white light. The white light shrouded the Shadow Clone sword. The Shadow Clone sword rose from the ground. The sword intent in the sky was shrouded by the white light, and the whole Shadow Clone sword seemed to become stronger. The left eye symbolized exuberant vitality. Whoosh! The sword light in the sky slashed down with endless sword chi. This time, wherever the sword chi went, everything seemed to become thriving. The leaves swept by the sword chi grew into towering trees, and the sand transformed into a huge mountain. Everything was growing crazily. The sword intent in the sky began to evolve into the purest sword. It was simple but incomparably mysterious. 9 heavenly sword guides, 9 returned to 1. The sword chi slashed down, shattering the void and arriving in the blink of an eye. The palace captain's face changed. This sword was even more strange than the sword chi from before. However, his soul bead had already exploded, and countless ripples appeared in the sky. The ripples seemed to have countless souls chanting. Sound waves quickly spread out from the ripples, and suddenly, a bottomless hole appeared in the mountain range in front of him. At this time, Mu Yu's white sky sword slashed down again. "Don't look down on me!" the palace captain roared. White sound waves gathered in the sky, blocking in front of him and facing the sky sword. After the sound waves met the white sword chi, they became stronger and stronger. It was as if they were devouring Mu Yu's sword chi. Mu Yu's white sword chi also began to weaken. "Haha! You are not a great ascension stage cultivator. Obediently accept your death." Chapter 1085. The White Ape Demon King exclaimed, "Kid, let go quickly. His sound waves will tear your soul into pieces." However, Mu Yu clenched his teeth and gripped the heaven sword tightly. The white light of the heaven sword gradually dimmed, but he seemed to be waiting for something. Just as the terrifying sound waves were about to engulf Mu Yu, the palace captain's smile suddenly froze. After the sound waves reached a peak, they began to crack, as if their vitality had been squandered away and they were in a miserable state. Crack! Crack! The sound wave completely turned into dust, and the palace captain's domain also reached its end, and began to collapse. But at this time, Mu Yu's heavenly sword still had a bit of vitality left, and slashed the palace captain's left arm, leaving a wound. "You can actually hurt me?" The palace guard was furious. He shot out a palm and crushed the heavenly sword into pieces. At the same time, he also sent Mu Yu flying. "You're still alive?" the White Ape Demon King said regretfully. Mu Yu stared at the palace captain. The shadow sword in his hand had completely lost its vitality. It no longer had the endless momentum from before. The palace captain looked at Mu Yu with hatred. He never thought that a great vehicle stage cultivator like himself would be injured by Mu Yu. Although it was only a small wound, it was enough to humiliate him. Mu Yu gasped for breath. The spiritual energy in his body had been exhausted to the extreme. At this time, another great vehicle stage aura was approaching from afar and was rapidly approaching. Hun Wuxiang, who had been lured away by him, had obviously realized that he was chasing after the wrong target and was now chasing after him again. The situation was getting more and more critical. "It's done. Let's go." Mu Yu tapped the air with the tip of his foot and turned to leave without hesitation. The White Ape Demon King was stunned and said, "It's done? He only had a wound. You bastard, what nonsense are you talking about?" Seeing Mu Yu turn to leave, the palace captain sneered. "Do you really think your heaven sword is so powerful?" However, before he could finish his words, his face suddenly changed. His eyes became incomparably shocked. He looked at the wound on his arm, as if he was staring at a terrifying beast. He immediately turned pale with fright. "Damn it, what did you do?" There was only a small wound on the palace captain's arm, which was caused by the heaven sword. However, it was this small wound that began to emit a sword aura full of vitality. It surged into the palace captain's hand. It was as if his entire body was boiling. The soul power in his body began to go out of control, and his skin began to swell. It was as if someone had blown a breath of air into the palace captain's body, making him completely lose control. "What is this?" Even the White Ape Demon King was a little surprised, let alone the palace lieutenant. He looked at the palace lieutenant, who was gradually swelling up with astonishment. He opened his mouth wide and suddenly exclaimed, "He's going to self-destruct? Is he stupid?" The aura that was constantly rising seemed to be the palace captain who was about to self-destruct. "What are you doing, palace captain?" Han Wuxiang had just caught up to the palace captain. He saw the palace captain's body begin to swell, and his aura became chaotic and violent. He cried out in alarm and wanted to stop the palace captain. The palace captain's mouth was wide open, and his face was incomparably hideous. It was as if he was suffering immense pain. His entire body had turned into a round ball. His soul power was flowing non-stop, and his skin was cracking. His eyes were wide open, and he couldn't even speak. "Not good!" Han Wuxiang was shocked. He turned to leave. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out with the palace captain as the center. A huge shockwave poured out in torrents, and the entire void seemed to have been torn apart. The sound was deafening, and the violent sound caused the ground within a radius of several tens of thousands of miles to shake. All the demonic beasts were destroyed, and not a single one of them was left alive. Moreover, a bottomless pit was blasted open in the ground. The power of a great ascension stage cultivator's self-destruction was beyond imagination. Mu Yu tried his best to hide far away before the palace captain self-destructed. Even so, such a huge tearing force still sent him and the white ape demon king flying. They smashed into the ground like a cannonball, and the entire landscape had been smashed open by their bodies. Cough cough. Mu Yu was smashed tens of thousands of meters deep into the ground. He was completely powerless. The white ape demon king was also thrown to an unknown place. At this time, little Shuai was doing his best to help Mu Yu block the mountain with his spiritual power, creating a small gap around Mu Yu. "I don't have any strength left." Mu Yu opened his eyes slightly. No matter how strong his body was, there were many fractures. He didn't even have the strength to move. The spiritual power in his body had been squandered away. At this time, he was almost relying on his last trace of consciousness to stay awake. The power of a great ascension stage cultivator's self-destruction is too great. This kind of sword technique really can't be used casually. Little Shuai firmly grabbed Mu Yu and strenuously protected Mu Yu as they dug underground and quickly rushed out of the ground. "Oh no, your injuries are too serious." Little Shuai anxiously looked at Mu Yu. Mu Yu's arms and legs were cracked, his sternum was caved in, and his whole body was dripping with blood, like a man made of blood. Just now, Mu Yu had attached the life force of the blink of life and death to the heavenly sword wound. When the palace captain absorbed the life force of the heavenly sword wound, a small wound was cut open by the heavenly sword. Although the wound was very small, the power of his left eye had already entered the palace captain's body, causing the soul power in the palace captain's body to begin to become more active. When the activity reached the peak, even the palace captain could no longer control his own soul power. This caused him to involuntarily explode and turn into ashes. This kind of terrifying sword technique, combined with the blink of life and death domain, was far more powerful than a simple blink of life and death domain. Even the white ape demon king and the other two great ascension stage cultivators had underestimated this power. However, the power of a great ascension stage cultivator's self-destruction was too terrifying. Mu Yu himself was unable to escape the range of the self-destruction, and was already seriously injured. Little Shuai began to help Mu Yu connect all the bones in his body. However, at this time, the terrifying power of the domain had already poured into Mu Yu's body again. Han Wuxiang. Mu Yu, you are really not simple. Han Wuxiang's figure appeared above Mu Yu. His aura had completely locked onto Mu Yu, and he looked down at Mu Yu condescendingly. The aura of his body was also slightly chaotic, but he quickly calmed down. As a great ascension stage expert, the self-destruction of the Hall Lieutenant's soul power was extremely terrifying. Even Han Wuxiang had suffered a hidden loss. However, Han Wuxiang himself was also a great ascension stage cultivator. He only suffered minor injuries, but Mu Yu had completely lost his ability to move. Bastard, why didn't this maggot die from the explosion? Little Shuai scolded as he protected Mu Yu behind him, and glared at Han Wuxiang. It's impossible to kill me with just this little power. However, I have to say that you have really impressed me. You are not a Great Ascension Stage cultivator, but you can use the Great Ascension Stage's domain power so perfectly. No wonder the people of our Soul Clan have fallen into your hands again and again. Han Wuxiang looked at Mu Yu mockingly. Although the hall lieutenant was killed in this operation, Han Wuxiang did not feel sad at all. For Han Wuxiang, as long as he could capture Mu Yu, the death of a hall lieutenant was not a big deal. Han Wuxiang turned his head and looked into the distance. Then, with a wave of his hand, a white soul lamp floated out and directly blasted another mountain to the ground. The soul lamp turned into countless tentacles and grabbed the embarrassed white ape demon king from the pile of rocks and smashed him next to Mu Yu. Damned caterpillar, sooner or later, I will kill you. The white ape demon king also seemed to be seriously injured. He was already seriously injured because of the ambush, and at this time, he was swept by the power of the hall lieutenant's self-destruction. He was already half dead, but he was a Great Ascension Stage cultivator, so his injuries were not as serious as Mu Yu's. Little bastard, are you okay? The white ape demon king sat up from the ground and asked anxiously. This time, I'm really screwed. Mu Yu sighed. This time, he faced two Great Ascension Stage cultivators alone. Even with the help of the white ape demon king and the blink of life and death, there was no way he could escape successfully. Even if he could kill the hall lieutenant, it was because of luck. In order to prevent you from ruining our plan, we have decided to kill you. Han Wuxiang said with a sanctimonious face. The white ape demon king shouted angrily, You dare to kill him? He is one of the immortals. If he dies, you won't live either. Han Wuxiang laughed. Don't worry, white ape demon king. In order to kill Jian Ying and Chen Feng's disciple, we have a foolproof plan. Killing Mu Yu won't make this world collapse. His power will be collected by my soul lamp. The soul lamp floated out of his hand and emitted a holy white light. It was like a lamp that was specially used to guide the gods, making people feel reverence. Whoosh! One soul after another rushed out of the soul lamps and pounced on Mu Yu with bared fangs and brandished claws. How dare you! The white ape demon king was shocked and angry. He jumped forward and blocked in front of Mu Yu. Bang! The white ape demon king was directly caught by the souls and was sent flying. He crashed into the distance. I'll deal with you later. Don't worry. Han Wuxiang sneered. All the souls gathered together again and rushed toward Mu Yu. Xiao Shuai shouted and dragged Mu Yu back. However, no matter how fast he was not as fast as Han Wuxiang, who was in the Great Ascension Stage. In an instant, Xiao Shuai was sent flying with a cry of pain. Mu Yu was caught in Han Wuxiang's hand. Han Wuxiang stared at Mu Yu and sneered, As long as I kill you, I'll have a great merit. Don't worry, your senior brother will come to find you soon. Mu Yu looked at Han Wuxiang weakly and sighed in his heart. I didn't expect an accident to happen this time. It's a pity that I couldn't accomplish what I wanted to do. Mu Yu was never afraid of death. He was already prepared to die. He just wanted to finish what he needed to do before he died, such as reviving his father and saving his master. The soul lamp shot out and rushed into Mu Yu's chest. A heart-wrenching pain immediately swept through his body. He felt like his soul was being bitten by thousands of ants and his consciousness was blurred. It was an unbearable pain, and his soul even began to crack. Just when he thought he was about to die, a mighty aura swept over from afar. This aura was vast and majestic, like a ray of sunlight, and immediately dispelled the pain in Mu Yu's body. At the same time, the chaos yin and yang in his body began to rotate and integrate into his soul. Under the effect of the black and white yin and yang, his shattered soul began to gradually repair itself. How dare you touch my son? His furious voice was like a thunderclap. An ancient aura rolled out and blasted Han Wuxiang away. Chapter 1086. That familiar voice made Mu Yu quiver. Even the pain in his body seemed to have disappeared at once. His mind was completely filled with that deep voice. Dad! Mu Yu opened his eyes in a daze and looked towards the source of the voice. It was a familiar figure. Although it was very illusory, it still looked so solid. It was like a mountain standing behind Mu Yu, making him feel a sense of security that he had never felt before. It was Deadwood Daddy. Buzz. A majestic aura swept out and rolled up Mu Yu, who was in the air, to Ku Mu's side. Ku Mu pursed his lips and his eyes were filled with an anxious look. However, his anxiety was mixed with endless anger. You're hurt. Deadwood was still a soul, but his eyes were burning. It was as if there was a volcano hidden in them that was going to erupt and burn anyone who hurt his son. Mu Yu looked at the familiar face in disbelief. It felt like a lifetime had passed. He had been working hard for so many years to resurrect this person in front of him and had never given up. He persevered even after experiencing disappointment again and again. At the moment when Han Wuxiang tried to kill him, his mind was filled with endless regret. He regretted that he had not been able to do it. However, he never expected that his father, who always scolded him, would appear here and save him at the critical moment. Dad! Mu Yu was speechless. His heart was roaring wildly. He clearly felt that he had a lot to say to this person in front of him. He wanted to tell him how guilty he was and what he had experienced all these years. However, at this moment, Mu Yu could not say anything. I'll kill whoever hurt you. Deadwood's eyes flashed with anger. Chaotic yin and yang surrounded his body. The powerful power of the great vehicle stage poured out and sealed the entire void, blocking all of Han Wuxiang's escape route. Domain ability, no way to survive. The entire void seemed to be shrouded by all kinds of gloomy poisonous fog. This poisonous fog was extremely terrifying and pervasive. It was as if even spiritual energy could be corroded by the poisonous fog, turning into a highly toxic substance. Nothing could survive in this area. Withered tree evergreen? You're still alive? Han Wuxiang, who had just stabilized himself, was also shocked. The cultivators might only know that Deadwood Evergreen was a stuttering poison user, but as a member of the Third Palace, Han Wuxiang was very familiar with Deadwood Evergreen. This was a person that even the master of the Third Palace, Bai Jie, had to be wary of. Whoosh! The sky-blotting poisonous fog quickly enveloped Soul Faceless. Soul Faceless roared furiously and his body shone with a white light. Tens of millions of soul lamps spread out to form a white barrier in front of him. At the same time, the countless resentful spirits within the soul lamps radiated powerful light to form massive tentacles, which attempted to tear apart the poisonous fog. Domain ability. Seal of 1,000 lanterns. 1. The giant hand formed by the soul lamps was extremely powerful. It was like a huge wave rolling over a river, trying to disperse the poisonous mist that blotted out the sky. However, when the giant white hand touched the green poisonous fog, the poisonous fog was not torn apart by the giant hand as expected. On the contrary, the poisonous fog directly adhered to the white tentacle and gradually turned it green. What? Han Wuxiang was both shocked and enraged. After the poisonous mist infected the tentacles broke free from his control and quickly moved toward the soul lamps along the tentacles. In just a breath, more than half of the soul lamps were infected by the green poisonous fog. The resentful spirits within the soul lamps let out shrill cries as if they could not withstand the corrosion of the poisonous fog. Kacha! Kacha! After being corroded by the poisonous fog, all of the soul lamps gradually solidified and finally exploded, turning into clouds of green poisonous fog. The domain of desperation expanded even more. A look of horror appeared on Han Wuxiang's face. They were both in the Great Ascension stage, but his domain ability could not withstand Deadwood's domain of desperation. In Deadwood's domain, the poisonous fog could not be blocked by soul power. It would only be assimilated by the poisonous fog and become a part of Deadwood's domain. When ordinary poisoners cast their poisonous fog, it would be easily blocked by the spiritual energy of a self-cultivator. However, when the poison was cultivated to the extreme, even spiritual energy would not be able to block the poisonous fog in the no-life hopeless situation. You die. Ku Mu stretched out his hand with murderous intent and clenched his fist. The area covered by desperation immediately began to shrink, trapping Han Wuxiang within and wrapping him into a ball. Bang! Soulless let out a heart-wrenching howl of agony as the poison spread. Soulless soul force was completely corroded by the poison, and the poison seeped into his body. Soulless face was twisted into a hideous expression, and his body was reduced to dust. Not even his soul was able to escape. Deadwood turned around, and mysterious runes appeared in his hands again. They wrapped around Mu Yu's body, and black and white chaotic yin and yang flowed out. They intertwined with Mu Yu's chaotic yin and yang and resonated with each other. This is the Pill Cauldron Sect's territory. Nothing will happen. Deadwood's eyes were filled with worry. Mu Yu looked at those familiar eyes, and his tensed consciousness finally relaxed. There was only excitement in his eyes, and he did not even think about why Deadwood Daddy would suddenly come back to life. Mu Yu did not care, and his whole body sank into endless darkness. It felt like a dream. It was very long, and the spring scenery was brilliant. The birds were singing, and the flowers were fragrant. The whole world had become very beautiful. Mu Yu slowly opened his eyes, and familiar inscriptions came into view. They intertwined and emitted a gentle light. There were 4 chaotic yin and yang shadows in the air, and little Shuai's laughter was mixed in. This was the ruin's cauldron. Mu Yu struggled to sit up, and as if remembering something, he quickly looked around. You're awake. Deadwood's figure slowly appeared in front of Mu Yu. Although it was illusory, Mu Yu felt that it was incomparably real. Mu Yu felt that Deadwood seemed to be relieved. Yes, I'm awake. Mu Yu looked at Deadwood and suddenly smiled. His smile was still so pure, like a child who did not know anything about the world. He saw the person he could rely on, as if any danger was not worth mentioning. He thought that when he saw that person again, he would be so moved that he would be speechless and cry bitterly. He would hug the other person tightly and call him Deadwood's father. He would tell the other person that he would definitely not anger him in the future. As long as Deadwood could live well, he would definitely listen to his father's words and pour out all the bitterness that he had suffered for many years. However, the moment Mu Yu saw Deadwood, he realized that many of his pretentious thoughts seemed to disappear instantly. He was still the optimistic person, and Deadwood was also the strict Deadwood. Even the greeting was so casual, as if they had parted yesterday and reunited today. Nothing had changed. In front of this person who cared about his face, Mu Yu could not be pretentious. Mu Yu chuckled. He had thought of many things before. He could not wait to tell Deadwood when he resuscitation him. He wanted to tell him what he had been doing all these years and how much he had missed him. However, when the words reached his mouth, he could not help but speak in a familiar tone. The two of them looked at each other, trying to see something in each other's eyes. It was as if they had met again after being separated by time and space. A familiar person, a familiar gaze. Deadwood opened his mouth as if to say something, but then he suppressed it and simply said, "It's good that you're fine." He was not good at saying anything emotional, nor was he good at expressing his feelings. Even if he was worried, he would only say it simply. Mu Yu just sat there and looked at Deadwood. He was very worried that this was a dream. The stubborn old man had returned. This was something he had dreamed of, but he felt that it was very unreal. He wanted to take a few more looks to confirm that this was not a dream. Why do you keep looking at me? Deadwood looked away. He seemed to be avoiding something, and looked a little uncomfortable. Muyu held his chin with his hand and said uncertainly, I don't know. Why don't you scold me? Deadwood frowned. Why would I scold you? I always feel that if you don't scold me, something is missing. It doesn't feel like you. Muyu touched his nose. Deadwood said angrily, Could it be that in your heart, I'm just a person who likes to scold people? Muyu tilted his head and pondered for a long time. His eyes rolled a few times, and then he nodded. Yes. You? Deadwood looked a little annoyed. After a long silence, Deadwood suddenly asked, Then, do the words you said before still count? What words? Muyu did not react. You called me, you said. Deadwood wanted to say something but stopped. His voice seemed to lack confidence. Why are you stuttering again? Muyu asked curiously. Deadwood glared at Muyu angrily. It seemed that he wanted to rush over and slap Muyu on the back of his head again. However, he thought of something and forcibly restrained himself. Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything, Deadwood said with a gloomy expression. Muyu was puzzled. Dad, why do you feel strange? Deadwood suddenly raised his head and looked at Muyu. It was as if he had heard something that surprised him. His eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope. Muyu suddenly understood and laughed. Oh, I know you want to ask me if I still recognize you as my dad, right? I don't care about these things. Deadwood could not wait and snorted coldly. He tried his best to pretend that he did not care. It was a classic example of someone who cared about face. No, I care. Before you left last time, you said that what you wanted most was a son. You inexplicably treated me as your son. I also inexplicably agreed. How can you go back on your words? Muyu chuckled. A smile appeared at the corner of Deadwood's mouth, but he quickly covered it up. He put on a straight face and snorted. You have a glib tongue. When will you let me worry less? Muyu rubbed his head. He found that all the injuries on his body had healed. The spiritual power in his body was even stronger. He was full of energy and very satisfied. Isn't it normal for a father to worry about his son? Muyu let out a long breath. In the air, Big Black, Big White, Little Black, and Little White were running around with Little Handsome on their head. Their playful voices spread throughout the ruin's opening cauldron. Chapter 1087. When did this happen? Muyu cocked his head to the side and asked. 3 days ago. Kumu knew what Muyu wanted to ask. There was always a tacit understanding between them. How did you do it? Muyu asked impatiently. Chaotic yin and yang, they repaired my soul. I only woke up 3 days ago, Kumu replied as he glanced at Dahei and Dabai in the air. Muyu's eyes widened. Chaotic yin and yang can do that? Then why did I run around in a daze to find a way to help you? That's why you're an idiot, Kumu said bluntly. Muyu chuckled as if it had been a long time since he was last scolded by this person. Dad, that's right. That's the feeling. I feel uncomfortable if you don't scold me. Why are you still asking to be scolded like before? Kumu glared at Muyu angrily. Muyu chuckled. Anyway, it doesn't matter if I get scolded or not. I'm very thick-skinned. It's all because you scolded me in the past. A smile appeared on Kumu's face. However, he then put on a stern expression and said, This matter is related to your chaotic yin and yang. There's a certain connection between the opening cauldron and the formation hall. I didn't know that chaotic yin and yang could do all this until your chaotic yin and yang ran into the opening cauldron and inadvertently had some effect. It was only a while ago that I gradually recovered. Dahei and Dabai leaped over and circled around Kumu. Little Hei and Little Bai also circled around Muyu. Muyu, you're awake? Kumu is panicking. I can see that he's about to jump up and down. He wants nothing more than to resurrect that Hun Faceless and kill him a few more times. He almost used heaven-shrouding blood to save you. He didn't relax for even a moment while you were unconscious. It would float around you like a ghost, floating here and there. After half a cup of tea's time, it would check your breath to see if you were dead or not. Oh right, I forgot that he's a ghost. Xiao Shui did a somersault and stepped around the four chaotic yin and yang. Really? Mu Yu asked curiously. It's fake, the dead tree replied without hesitation. Then we'll just pretend that it's real. Mu Yu snickered. Kumu glared at Mu Yu angrily. Why are you still as childish as a child? How old was he? You don't even have the maturity that you should have at this age. When will you grow up? Isn't there a famous saying that I'll always be a child in front of my dad? Mu Yu pretended to be serious. Famous quote? Which famous person said that? Why haven't I heard of it? Deadwood asked. Mu Yu. Mu Yu didn't blush at all when he said his name. Anyway, his name had always been wanted in the cultivation world, so he could be considered a celebrity. Kumu glared at Mu Yu again and said slowly, What happened to you recently? Tell me. Since your accident, I went to the Array sect and did some things there. Do you want to hear about it? I know about those things. I even know about you going to the Demon Island. What I want to know is what happened after you put my soul in the cauldron of ruins. Kumu interrupted Mu Yu. You know about it? Who told you? Mu Yu asked curiously. The dead tree said, The soul anchoring formation maintained my consciousness. Although I can't speak and look like I'm sleeping, I know everything you do. I've always been by your side. I even know when you turn over in your sleep at night. Mu Yu exclaimed, What? You knew what I did by following me? Doesn't that mean that Xiao Shui and I were? Well, yes, young man, you have good energy. Kumu made a rare joke. Mu Yu's face turned green and he scolded. You old pervert, how dare you peek at my privacy? Don't you know that there are some things that you should avoid? You didn't really watch the whole process, did you? That's very dirty and evil. Mu Yu almost jumped. Who would have thought that Kumu was actually conscious in the soul anchoring formation? Kumu just looked at Mu Yu indifferently and let Mu Yu complain. In the end, Mu Yu sat down again dejectedly. Forget it, I've seen it. I really don't know if I've been unlucky for 8 lifetimes or what, but I can be sure that you're jealous of me doing that kind of thing, right? After all, I'm young and aggressive, so I should. Slap. Kumu slapped Mu Yu on the head, and it was a familiar pain. What are you doing? Mu Yu said angrily. Although Kumu was a soul, he could still exert the cultivation of the great vehicle stage, so it was still very painful. Kumu's face was a little dark. Do you really think I'm that kind of lecher? How could I watch that kind of thing? I was just joking with you, and you took it seriously? Mu Yu smiled and quickly waved his hand. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. I said that Father is wise and powerful, so he shouldn't do such a thing. I'm just complaining about being kept in the dark. You're right. Kumu snorted. After a while, he thought of something and slapped Mu Yu on the back of the head again. Why did you hit me again? Mu Yu asked in pain. That slap just now wasn't enough to vent my anger, Kumu said calmly. 1,000 alpacas galloped through Mu Yu's heart. In the ruins' opening cauldron, there was a soul and a person. It was a familiar scene, as if many things had happened yesterday. So you saw my heroic deeds in the formation sect. 8 steps to heaven, I defeated the sect master of the talisman sect, Chang Tianqing. How was my performance? SOSO. Out of 10, how many points do you give me? 2 points. What about my battle with Akatsuki? I beat Akatsuki so badly that she had to look for her teeth on the ground. Akatsuki is cunning and has colluded with the gate of hell. She wanted to kill people to restore her cultivation, but I stopped her. 1 point. What about your performance on the Demon Island? I cracked Taoist Master Xian Jizi's demon-subduing pagoda and fought back and forth with the Japanese from the Gate of Hell. Mu Yu gestured with his fists. He was very satisfied with his performance in the demon-subduing pagoda. 3 points. What about the 2 mixed blood dragons I killed in the Demon Island? At that time, I hadn't reached the crossing calamity stage yet. Wasn't it a brave man fighting an evil dragon? 2 points. What about helping you save the Danding sect? Your dearest Danding sect was going to perish, and I pulled it back from the edge of destruction. 2 points. No passing points. No. Not even friendship points. No. Family points. No. Since we are so familiar with each other, give me some face. Muyu was defeated. It was too difficult to get this stubborn old man to give him 5 points. He looked around gloomily and asked, "Where's your body? I can use life and death now and can resurrect you in the blink of an eye." The atmosphere suddenly became a little quiet. Then the dead tree said faintly, "I'm destroyed." What? Destroyed? Muyu was shocked and immediately stood up. His body was destroyed? He stared at the dead tree and asked, "Do you know that you can't be resurrected without a body? Why did you destroy your body? I can bring you back to life." The dead tree snorted and said, "What do you think?" Muyu looked at the dead tree's eyes and his chest kept rising and falling. He felt an inexplicable irritation and said in a deep voice, "You know, I was the one who set up the heaven-shrouding blood spell," the dead tree replied coldly. The dead tree was a formation master. He used the heaven-shrouding blood spell to save Muyu and understood the significance of this spell technique. "It belongs to whoever owns it," Muyu said angrily. If he used the heaven-shrouding blood spell on Deadwood Daddy, he would die. However, Muyu never regretted doing this. He didn't think that returning his life to his father was wrong. "I gave it to you," the dead tree emphasized. Muyu clenched his fist. "I don't need it." The dead tree looked at Muyu and his expression eased. He shook his head and said, "You call me father, so I have to accept this title." Muyu said sarcastically, "Then what if I call you a stuttering old man with green hair? You'll take my life back?" The dead tree's tone was very calm. "I don't like to take back things that I've given away." The dead tree's calm tone annoyed Muyu. Muyu had been looking for a way to repair his soul for so many years, and then used the heaven-shrouding blood spell to bring his father back to life. However, the dead tree's simple words negated all his efforts over the years. He felt very angry, inexplicably angry. The anger in his chest became more and more intense. He had been trying to revive the person in front of him to make up for his regrets and his past mistake. For this purpose, he wasn't even afraid of death. However, the dead tree's simple decision made everything go to waste. He destroyed his own body. Muyu shouted angrily, "Don't think that giving your life to me is so amazing. What's the point of living for others?" He was always so full of himself, thinking that he could do whatever he wanted. "What are you doing? How great do you think you are? Let me tell you. I don't care what you give me. I don't care." He didn't know why he suddenly became so angry. When he learned that the old man had given his life to him, he had been living in guilt. He felt that his life no longer belonged to him alone. The life flowing in his body was like a heavy mountain, pressing down on him until he couldn't breathe. He had been working hard all these years, wanting to do the right thing. He wanted to return things to their rightful owners and cross the hurdle in his heart, even if he couldn't live. However, the stubborn old man was stubborn. The first thing he did when he recovered was to destroy his body. Just like Muyu understood the dead tree also understood Muyu. They both knew what the other would do. Muyu risked his life to revive the dead tree, and the dead tree could risk his life to protect Muyu. Therefore, the dead tree destroyed his own body. He was always one step faster than Muyu. However, Muyu never revealed his plans. He hid it from everyone and made a deal with Gomong, using his own life as a bargaining chip. He did it very carefully and didn't let anyone discover his intentions. However, Muyu didn't expect that the dead tree's soul would recover with the help of the chaos yin and yang. The only thing he did wrong was to leave the dead tree's body and soul here. I gave my life away. Whether you value it or not, I have never regretted it. The dead tree didn't look into Mu Yu's eyes. Instead, he reached out and touched the chaos yin and yang. The chaos yin and yang seemed to calm down because of the ups and downs of their emotions. They were like two docile little beasts, using their heads to nudge their master to comfort him. You don't regret it, but I do. Mu Yu felt like a volcano was waiting to erupt. He couldn't wait to vent it. His entire body seemed to be enveloped by the power of anger. His figure flashed, and he punched the walls of the cauldron. Violent spiritual power poured out of his body and blasted against the cauldron. Buzz! The entire cauldron trembled slightly. A crisp sound echoed in the surroundings for a long time. He closed his eyes and lay on the ground. His chest couldn't calm down. Chapter 1088. I always wanted you to live for yourself once. Mu Yu's voice became very hoarse and his mood was very low. After that punch, he seemed to have personally destroyed all his hope. Ku Mu was silent for a long time before responding. Everyone has their own way of living. So your way of living is to sacrifice yourself at all times to live for others? You were not willing to take away Marshal Uncle Yundan's position as sect leader and leave the Pill Cauldron sect. You were clearly an alchemy genius, but you learned the poison arts that everyone avoided and made yourself unpopular. You became the owner of the Ruins Cauldron, but were not willing to take away the Chaos Yin and Yang. You liked Martial Ant but silently withdrew. You saved my master for her and in the end, you even gave up your own life. What did you get in return for living like this? No one understands you. You have nothing. Nothing. That stubborn and prideful person had always lived for others. He had never lived for himself. He had lived in the misunderstandings of others, and even his death was not worth mentioning. No one knew what he had done, and no one knew what kind of person he was. Other than Mu Yu, no one understood him. Mu Yu felt that it was not worth it for Ku Mu. He had always wanted Ku Mu to live again, to live for himself and not always accommodate others. What was the meaning of that kind of life? Ku Mu looked at Mu Yu lying on the ground. He moved his lips and his eyes flashed with a satisfied and gratified light. There was no regret or pity. I do not have nothing. I have a son. The person lying on the ground angrily was his son. Mu Yu stilled slightly. His breathing became hurried, as if something was choking his throat, making him unable to speak. He had a son. These words were like a giant hand that lifted the mountain that had been suppressed in Mu Yu's heart for a long time. The inexplicable anger in Mu Yu's chest gradually dissipated. It was as if a ray of sunlight shone into his heart and dispelled his haze. The lost strength slowly returned to his body, and his shriveled chest swelled up again. Some strange emotions surged in his heart and caused Mu Yu's eyes to become hazy. So what if the world thinks of me? All I care about is my son's judgment. As long as he understands me, that's enough. The dead tree looked at Mu Yu as if he was talking to himself, but also as if he was describing a fact. The dead tree's emotions were always so simple that Mu Yu couldn't refute it. Mu Yu lay on the ground and looked at the inscriptions above the Kai Su cauldron. He pretended to focus all his attention on it. He could feel his own heartbeat. It was so real. For the first time, he felt that his life had a new weight. Turned out that life could also flow like this. It flowed through Mu Yu's body in a strange way. Between the two of them, life didn't seem to be just life, but another precious thing. He didn't say anything else. Instead, he was thinking about what life was. What was the point of living? What was the difference between life and death? How did the dead live in this world? Had the living lost their principles and died a long time ago? In the past, he didn't like killing lives. He liked the prosperity of life. However, after leaving the Moyen mountain range, he learned how to kill. He had accumulated countless lives in his hands. He had even buried the entire population of Eastern Sand City with his own hand. When his hands were stained with blood, life became insignificant to him. He could take away those who deserved to die without hesitation. But when it came to his own life, he couldn't let it go. He knew that his life didn't belong to him alone, so he had to return it to that person. The world of cultivation was full of intrigue and deception. Cultivators could kill their fellow apprentices, their masters, and their companions for the sake of some magical equipment. Even if it was family or friendship, they would not hesitate to kill their fellow apprentices for the sake of benefits. He had seen all of this before. For example, the Jiuhua school's disciples, Tang Yang and Li Yuan, had killed each other for the demon spirit of the flame horse beast. Shi Dengtian of the Pill Cauldron sect had used his disciple, Su Zai, as a tool for revenge and discarded him after using him. In Wuqiu City, Zhang Gan, as a senior brother, had wanted to kill his junior brother, Wen Li, in order to collect soul points in exchange for the soul-shocking sword. The Valley Master of the Golden Wolf Valley had killed his senior brother and master in order to become Tian Jianqing's disciple. Mengpa had killed her husband for the twins. Killing for benefits was the norm in the cultivation world. But there were still people in the cultivation world who worked hard for their lives. They wanted to make their lives more meaningful. Deacon Sun had risked his life to fight back in order to help the Grey disciples no longer be humiliated. The nameless swordsman, Pajian, was willing to give up his heart for the woman he loved. Master Lu was willing to use his life to atone for his mistakes. Mu Tianhe had finally put down his dignity for his family. Old Turtle and Boss Lu were willing to sacrifice themselves for the Sea Goblin King. Taoist Yundan was unwilling to submit for the sake of righteousness. Master Medicine was willing to endure humiliation in order to protect his disciples. Xian Jingtong's family was unwilling to betray their benefactor. Old City Lord He Jinglong was generous and sacrificed himself for a righteous cause. Village Head Grandpa was willing to protect Mu Yu even though he had no cultivation. Just like Tian Ran, who had sacrificed her life to save him. Just like Deadwood Evergreen, who had always lived for others and had given up his life. Just like Sword Shadow Chen Feng, who had sacrificed his monstrous cultivation and even endless life to protect the world he loved. Mu Yu had never understood what life was. He could feel the flow of life, but he couldn't understand it. When the life in his body became heavy, he couldn't give it up. He couldn't understand. He clearly understood every word and action of this strange old man in front of him, but he just couldn't understand. What was life? What was the purpose of cultivators using their limited lifespan to cultivate? Was it just to become stronger? Or was it to explore the breadth of life? The length of a person's life was about the same, more or less a few decades. But the breadth of a person's life was different. The breadth of some people's lives was as thin as a thread. Their lives were narrow, and nothing could be left behind after they died. Some people's lives could be as wide as the sea. Their lives were vast and mighty, but the things they left behind were like a surging tide. Living a vigorous life for oneself was life. Living for others at all times was also life. Mu Yu looked at the inscriptions above the ruins' opening cauldron. Deadwood looked at him silently. "You're very important to me," Deadwood said reluctantly, breaking the silence. Mu Yu closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Although I'm not a responsible father, no father is willing to let his son lose his life," Deadwood said. "Then what about me? Should I just watch my father live like this?" Mu Yu asked in a low voice. "Your life is more important than mine," Mu Yu said coldly. "Do you look down on yourself that much? You're also a rare genius in the world. Be it formations, alchemy, or poison, you're proficient in everything. If you live, how can Bai Jie act so unscrupulously? Bai Jie is somewhat afraid of me, but he understands me and knows how to deal with me. You're different. He doesn't understand you, so you have the advantage. You have the chi of life and death in you, and you're also someone with eternal life. The heavenly sword and formations, as well as Spirit Lord Yu Meng's domain, you can surprise him, Deadwood said simply. After a while, Deadwood said, in order to protect the world your master guards, you must live. Mu Yu clenched his fist. Why do I have to protect this world? Because Feng Haochen left this matter to you, Deadwood said. Mu Yu sat up again and gritted his teeth. His thoughts were in a mess. His master wanted to protect the entire third layer of heaven. For everyone in the third layer of heaven, his master was willing to make any sacrifice, cultivation or life. But Mu Yu didn't want to. Mu Yu never thought of himself as great. He was just a person. Now that he had great power, he was still a person. He didn't destroy his 7 emotions and 6 desires, so he had human emotions. The cultivators were sinister and deceitful. When he came out of Luochen Mountain, he thought he would inherit his master's will to protect the cultivators and become the so-called savior. But when he saw the ugly side of the cultivators, he was tired. He realized that not everyone was worth saving. Especially when the cultivators began to slander Jian Ying and Chen Feng, Mu Yu was furious to the extreme. For this world, his master had made great sacrifices. He had never done anything wrong to the world, but in the end, what did he get? Slander, destroy his statue, and kill his disciple. No matter how sinister and cunning the third layer palace was, it wasn't an excuse for the cultivators to slander Jian Ying and Chen Feng. As long as they had a little brain, they wouldn't suspect a true god just based on a few words. Could it be that the people his master wanted to protect were these stupid, cowardly, ungrateful cultivators? If so, then Mu Yu couldn't do it. He could go through fire and water for the people he cared about. Even if he had to give up his life, it didn't matter. He wasn't afraid of death at all. He could risk his life to protect his family in Clearwater City, his loved ones in Luochen Mountain, the villagers in Flowing Water Village, Qiao Shui and Tian Ran, Elder Sun, Master Lu, Taoist Yundan, Medicine Master, and Zhuge Shaosheng. He could protect Xian Jingtong's family and the old city lord who had nothing to do with him. He could protect the fearless Little Dawn and Little Qingfan. He could fight and kill to protect these people. But he would never blindly throw his life away for those selfish and stupid cultivators. I don't want to protect this world. Mu Yu clenched his fist. Dead Tree just looked at Mu Yu. He understood Mu Yu and knew what Mu Yu was thinking. Dead Tree was also clear about the situation in Eastern Sand City. Even if the killing power affected Mu Yu and made him unable to distinguish right from wrong and lose his own judgment, Mu Yu still tried to maintain his last bit of rationality and let the righteous old city lord make the decision for him. If the old city lord wanted to save everyone in the city, he would save them. At that time, Mu Yu, who couldn't control the killing power, could only hope that he didn't do anything wrong. If the people of Eastern Sand City hadn't killed the old city lord and become the last straw, Eastern Sand City wouldn't have been destroyed by Mu Yu with his own hands. Now, Mu Yu suppressed the killing power, but he had seen through the nature of the cultivators. It was very difficult for Mu Yu to put down his prejudice and save everyone. Chapter 1089. One soul sat while the other lay down. After an unknown amount of time, they remained silent. Under Little Handsome's lead, Big Black and Big White began to play with Little Black and Little White. They ran happily in the air. Little Handsome's laughter was very crisp, bringing a hint of vitality to the dull atmosphere. Mu Yu changed the topic. Do Uncle Master Yundan and the others know about your resuscitation? Deadwood shook his head. They don't know yet. Why not? I've been recovering since the resuscitation, so I didn't have time to tell them. If my chaotic yin and yang hadn't sensed your chaotic yin and yang and discovered that you were in danger, I would still be in seclusion. Nothing will happen to your soul again, right? Mu Yu asked. The cauldron of ruins is what my soul relies on to survive. As long as it's here, I'm here, Deadwood said. Doesn't that mean your freedom has been restricted by the cauldron of ruins? You win some, you lose some. You can control the cauldron of ruins to leave the pill cauldron sect, right? I won't let it leave the pill cauldron sect. Muyu fell silent. The cauldron of ruins was a treasure passed down by the pill cauldron sect. It protected the entire sect. In thousands of years, Deadwood was the last owner of the cauldron of ruins. The cauldron of ruins was under Deadwood's control at all times. As long as Deadwood was willing, he could take the cauldron of ruins anywhere. However, Deadwood wouldn't do that. He always believed that the cauldron of ruins was a treasure of the pill cauldron sect and didn't belong to him. Even if the third heaven is being toyed with by the Spiritas? Muyu asked again. You have to deal with these matters, Deadwood said. Muyu fell silent. What about Demon King White Ape? Did you save him? Yes. Muyu nodded. Looking at Deadwood Daddy's soul, he couldn't be angry anymore. Even though he knew that Deadwood Daddy could only live in this form, even though he was very sad, the person who could do such a thing was the person called Deadwood Evergreen. Only this person could do such a thing. This matter couldn't be more natural. His heart calmed down, and the depression in his heart dissipated. Muyu tried his best to squeeze out a smile. He didn't want to be entangled in all this, so he returned to his former playful self and asked, Are you proud of me? No. Muyu sighed. He would never get a positive compliment from this stubborn old man. Muyu had a lot of questions that he wanted to know about the resurrection of the withered tree. He thought of something else and asked, Father, what exactly is sealed in the world crack? Is there a world aperture under your valley? The dead tree said in surprise, You even know this? I've been to the chaotic burial valley in the Moyen mountain range, an abyss on the other side of the sea, and the great abyss of the demon race. You know all these. Later, I went to the underground of the gate of hell. You probably don't know about this. Grandpa Village Chief used a map to draw 8 places, and one of them is the valley you're in. Muyu told him everything that had happened after he left the Pill Cauldron School. He even told him about his own discovery. The dead tree nodded and said, This formation is very powerful. It's not weaker than the immortal confinement prison. Feng Haochen personally set it up to protect the entire 3 continents. It greatly restricts the movements of the strange races in the 3 heavens. You guessed right. There is a seal under the valley, but it has been sealed by me. The crack in the Garden of 50 Miles in the south has been sealed by Ciebulo, and the crack in the demon race has been sealed by Green Dragon Demon King. Bai Jie doesn't know about these places. Even if he finds them, at least the 3 places I mentioned are safe. Then why are the Danding sect and the Formation sect in the Yin and Yang positions of this formation? Muyu asked again. The dead tree said, The opening ruins cauldron and the formation hall are the eyes of this protective formation. This is also why I can't let the opening ruins cauldron leave the Danding sect. You can't let the formation hall leave the formation sect either. Muyu didn't know that the formation hall was the eye of the 3 heavens protective formation. Then should I go to the other 2 places to take a look? Muyu asked. Your top priority now is to comprehend your own domain and become a great ascension stage person, the dead tree said. It was very difficult for someone who hadn't become a great ascension stage cultivator to gain an advantage in front of the soul race. You will help me, right? Muyu asked as he looked at the chaotic yin and yang. I will give you time to cultivate, but as for what kind of domain you will comprehend, it will all depend on your own perception. The dead tree waved his hand and the 4 chaotic yin and yang suddenly jumped down. They were controlled by him and kept spinning and chasing. Also, you haven't really learned how to control the chaotic yin and yang. It is a waste for the chaotic yin and yang to follow you. In the past, if you knew how to control the chaotic yin and yang, facing the gate of hell and the dragon race, you would have been crushed. Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan are probably several times stronger than you, so you must properly learn how to use the chaotic yin and yang. Mu Yu helplessly shrugged. He had just told the dead tree about Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan, but at least the two of them had Xie Bulo to guide them, but Mu Yu didn't have anyone to guide him on how to use the chaotic yin and yang. Now that there was an expert who knew what was good for him, Mu Yu hurriedly said, "Then you can also tell me how to fully utilize the chaotic yin and yang's power. You definitely can't bear to see your son walk out and embarrass you, right?" Humph. The dead tree coldly snorted. Mu Yu took it as a yes. Above the white clouds, a waterfall fell from the sky as if it was pouring out from a crack in the sky. It landed on the clouds and made a crisp sound. There were birds flying around the waterfall, and the sound of birds chirping rose and fell one after another. A breeze blew past, and the clouds slowly floated and rippled. Big Black, Big White, Little Black, and Little White had already drilled into Mu Yu's body, and with the help of the dead tree, the chaotic yin and yang quickly constructed a strange space inside Mu Yu's body. The waterfall above the ninth heaven seemed to have suddenly stopped, and the water splashed onto the clouds and stopped in midair, as if it was fixed by some strange power. The wind also seemed to have disappeared halfway. The floating clouds no longer moved, and the birds also stopped in midair, still maintaining the state of flapping their wings. To use the chaotic yin and yang's power, you need to have a balanced state of mind. At that time, when you comprehended the 81 inscriptions, you should know what balance means. This world is made up of balance, and with spiritual power as the medium, fuse them into a perfect state of balance. The dead tree's voice echoed around Mu Yu, using his own method to teach Mu Yu how to control the chaotic yin and yang's power. Mu Yu carefully felt the peaceful power from the chaotic yin and yang. He had used the chaotic yin and yang many times, but almost every time, he didn't fully use the chaotic yin and yang's power. The dead tree said that every time he used the chaotic yin and yang's power, it was almost always on the surface, and he didn't have a deep understanding of the chaotic yin and yang's mysteries. The dead tree didn't explain too much to Mu Yu. All he could do was guide Mu Yu through the basics, and the rest was up to Mu Yu to learn in his own way. When the dead tree controlled the chaotic yin and yang, he had the guidance passed down by the ancestors of the Pill Cauldron sect, so he knew what to do correctly. After Mu Yu obtained the chaotic yin and yang, he didn't have any guidance. When Mu Yu obtained the recognition of the Array Palace didn't have any cultivation methods left behind by the ancestors. Even the Array Heavenly Tao didn't obtain the chaotic yin and yang, so the chaotic yin and yang didn't have much use for Mu Yu. The chaotic yin and yang was the purest balance in the world. All of this was very similar to the power of the underworld grass. The underworld grass also had life and death aura. Now, it had changed his spirit power into the dangerous black and white power. His body seemed to contain a great killing machine. Once he lost control, there would be unpredictable consequences, so he didn't dare to break the balance of the black and white spirit power in his body. Just like the dead tree said, this world existed because of balance. Just like Gomang's powerful life and death in the blink of an eye, he relied on the power of life and death to kill people. Gomang's domain power was also a type of balance. Losing balance would have very serious consequences. Just like the 5 elements in a person's body, the 5 elements must reach a certain amount for a person to survive. The closer the 5 elements in a person's body reached a balance, the longer a person's life would be. When the 5 elements reached a perfect balance, one could achieve immortality. When the 5 elements were seriously lacking, it was impossible to survive. For example, Mu Yu's 5 elements were wood. He was a person who was destined to die early, but he was lucky enough to survive. If he wanted to control the chaotic yin and yang, comprehending the way of balance was the most important. What is the way of balance? Is it the mentality of not being happy with external things and not being sad for oneself? Or is it to be calm in the face of change? Mu Yu pondered. Unknowingly, his body began to circulate the falling dust cultivation method. The falling dust cultivation method focused on a kind of calmness. Moving in calmness, one would comprehend a kind of tranquility. This was also a kind of balance. Their master often taught them to rely on their heart to do things. As long as they had a clear conscience, even killing people was right. A clear conscience, was this also a kind of balance? The black and white spirit power slowly circulated in Mu Yu's body. The falling dust cultivation method led the black and white spirit power to chase after the strange balance. Mu Yu's heart also became very calm. He seemed to be grasping something, but he was just an inch away. Everything in the world was mutually reinforcing and restraining. There was no absolute strong and there was no absolute weak. This was also a kind of balance that existed in the world. The balanced aura of chaotic yin and yang surrounded Mu Yu. He thought of life and death in the blink of an eye. This was a strange ability, but Mu Yu's use was very limited. Even if Gomang wanted to use the power of life and death to fight with a Deshang stage cultivator, it would be difficult for him to take advantage because the light of life and death in the blink of an eye could hardly hit others. However, Mu Yu used the indestructible characteristic of the heavenly sword to lead the power of life and death in the blink of an eye to the heavenly sword. Combined with his swordsmanship, he played this domain ability to another level. Even Gomang did not expect that his domain ability could be used like this. Mu Yu was able to use the heavenly sword and life and death in the blink of an eye to kill the palace guard. The most important thing was the heavenly sword. If it was any other magic weapon, it would be difficult to control the power of life and death in the blink of an eye. However, the heavenly sword would not. This sword was too powerful. Coupled with the unparalleled swordsmanship of the heavenly sword 9 draws, it allowed Mu Yu to play the domain ability of life and death in the blink of an eye to the fullest. Chapter 1090. Seeing that Mu Yu had entered a meditative state, Deadwood breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that what Mu Yu needed now was time. All he could do was make sure that no one disturbed Mu Yu. He then turned and left the Revelation Cauldron, reappearing before the White Ape Demon King. The White Ape Demon King was inside a sealed array formation of the ancient transmission array of the Pill Cauldron School. It was similar to the ancient scripture pavilion of the Pill Cauldron School. Apart from the Dead Tree, no one in the Pill Cauldron School knew about this place. The Dead Tree knew more about the ancient transmission array of the Pill Cauldron School than anyone else. The White Ape Demon King's wounds had healed, but he looked very weak. Clearly, he had suffered a great injury and had yet to fully recover. Mu Yu woke up quickly with Deadwood's help and Mu Yu's powerful recovery ability. He was still alive and kicking. However, the White Ape Demon King was different. Although he was an old Demon King, he had been hit by the Spiritkin's special soul-binding ability. It would not be easy to recover. The White Ape Demon King opened his eyes and looked at Deadwood. "I recognize you. You are Deadwood Evergreen. You are the father that Brat keeps talking about." Deadwood snorted. "Because of you, Mu Yu was almost killed. You cannot escape the blame." The White Ape Demon King's face twitched. "How is he? Is he okay? If anything happens to him, I guarantee that you will never be able to come out of the seal," Deadwood said coldly. The White Ape Demon King stood up and stared at Deadwood angrily. "Are you threatening me?" "Yes." Kumu was not at all courteous when he spoke to the White Ape Demon King. Although he was only a soul now, he was able to wield domain powers with the help of the Kai Su Cauldron. Coupled with his powerful array techniques, it would not be easy to seal the White Ape Demon King in a Dao item like the Kai Su Cauldron. The White Ape Demon King's arrogance made him hate being threatened the most. However, it was undeniable that Deadwood Evergreen was an expert who was looked down upon by others. He had the confidence to say that. If Deadwood had used the power of the Kai-Su Cauldron to seal the White Ape Demon King, the injured White Ape Demon King would not have been able to do anything. The White Ape Demon King glared fiercely at the dead tree. He originally wanted to curse, but in the end, he sat down again and reluctantly said, "It's good that he's fine. This is my fault. I don't want to argue about anything. You demons now have 4 demon monarchs. Don't you think it's funny that you're the only one here to receive Demon Monarch Heavenly Qian? 9 people of eternal life have fallen into the hands of the White World. Are you people of the shifter race so weak?" Kumu said. The White Ape Demon King frowned. He didn't like Deadwood's tone. "The way you talk is very similar to that brat. It's annoying. This has nothing to do with you." Deadwood didn't seem to like the White Ape Demon King at all. "How is it not related? Xiao Shui is my daughter. Do you think I have anything to do with her?" the White Ape Demon King said in a mocking tone. "Speaking of which, if you are the little bastard's father, you will be Xiao Shui's father-in-law in the future. That means we will be in-laws in the future, right?" Kumu was startled for a moment. The term in-law made him feel a little strange. In the past, he rarely thought that there would be a time when he would become Mu Yu's in-law. He suddenly realized that after he became Mu Yu's father, it seemed that he would have to face this problem. Then, his expression seemed to have eased a lot. Then, he thought of Tianran and said, "Don't try to get close to me. Who Mu Yu likes is his business." The White Ape Demon King maliciously said, "I heard you and Jian Ing Chen Feng don't get along. Let me think. Mu Yu likes Jian Ing Chen Feng's daughter. Are you willing to be in-laws with Jian Ing Chen Feng in the future? I think you helping Mu Yu make a choice is very smart. I'm easier to talk to than Jian Ing Chen Feng." Deadwood's face became very dark. He had never considered this problem. He already didn't like Jian Ing Chen Feng. Suddenly, the White Ape Demon King said such a thing without rhyme or reason. It was undoubtedly adding fuel to the fire. However, Deadwood quickly calmed down and said, "Those 2 girls are good, but whether it's Jian Ing Chen Feng or you, I dislike them both. Don't try to change the topic. Let me ask you, what are you demons planning?" "Planning? What can we plan?" the White Ape Demon King said disdainfully. Deadwood said coldly, "Mu Yu doesn't know what happened in the past, so he can't see it." "Do you think I can't see it?" When he went to the demons, whether it was the poisonous fog of the ruins or some strange aura there, they were all very abnormal. "Although I couldn't move at that time, I still know a lot of things. Don't play dumb with me." The White Ape Demon King was really surprised this time. "You were just a soul at that time. How could you see it?" The White Ape Demon King didn't know that Deadwood's consciousness was awake in the soul anchoring array. Deadwood asked coldly, "Do you want to do that again? Have you set your sights on the seal of the ruins?" The White Ape Demon King's expression changed slightly. Only then did he put away his playful expression and become very serious. "So what if we do? Someone has to do it. We just don't want to live so sullenly." "You are doing it blindly and brainlessly. You are destined to fail," Deadwood said indifferently. "Is that so?" "That might not be so." The White Ape Demon King's eyes shone with high fighting spirit. "Even 3 Mahayana stage spiritlings can beat you up like this, and you still have the nerve to do that?" Deadwood said coldly. The White Ape Demon King's face flushed red. He said angrily, "I was just too careless. They used underhanded means. They used underhanded means to trip you up. If you face them head-on, what are your chances of winning? You can't even protect Demon King Tianqian, and you dare to challenge them? How much strength do you demons have now? How much of your cultivation have you recovered?" White Ape Demon King was rendered speechless by Dead Tree's words. He roared angrily, If it weren't for Sword, Shadow, and Dust Wind who had sealed me for thousands of years and obliterated my cultivation base, I wouldn't be in such a sorry state. If it were in the past, those maggots in the third palace wouldn't be able to hurt me no matter how many underhanded methods they use. I could even beat Bai Jie until he was looking for his teeth on the ground. Deadwood said mockingly, "You know that was in the past. Then what right do you have now?" The White Ape Demon King looked angry. He shouted, "You didn't do anything. What right do you have to tell me what to do? I'm just warning you. I don't care if you demons want to die, but don't drag the entire third heaven into a land of injustice. The demons living at the edge of the ruins have a strange illness. Don't you understand?" Deadwood said coldly. The White Ape Demon King was shocked. "Wait, you're saying that the strange illness of the demons in the Valley of Dawn has something to do with this?" The demons in the Valley of Dawn had a strange illness. It wasn't a serious illness, but when they slept at night, strange patterns would appear on certain parts of their bodies. Some of them would be controlled involuntarily and do unimaginable things. The old doctor in the Valley of Dawn had consulted Mu Yu, but because the illness was very unique, Mu Yu couldn't diagnose it. In addition, when the illness acted up, it would hurt and wake people up. Once they woke up, they would be fine. So the matter was left unsettled. However, Deadwood, who had been in the soul anchoring formation, knew everything about it. He also understood what this illness of the demons meant. "Their illness has something to do with this?" the White Ape Demon King asked doubtfully. "We all know what kind of place the ruins are. The ruins' poison can torture you demons so badly. You still want to do something to the ruins? Do you think the heavenly enforcers will allow you to do so?" Deadwood hit the nail on the head. The White Ape Demon King's expression changed. He didn't expect Deadwood, who was just a damaged soul, to be able to see so much. Even the Demon Kings didn't care about the strange illness of the demons. They had always thought that it wasn't important. He looked anxious. "You mean to say that those fellows in the ruins are preparing to cross the ruins and come to us? But the ruins' poison is fatal to them. That's why they're targeting the demons. They're taking over their souls and controlling them. They're using another method to cross the ruins. Right now, they're only at the invasion stage. If we don't stop them, the situation will worsen. When that happens, it'll be too late for you to regret it," Deadwood said. The White Ape Demon King recalled something. His expression darkened. "How can this be? The strange illness in the Valley of Dawn was caused by this? We didn't think of this. We thought that we were careful enough and wouldn't be caught by the heavenly enforcers. The heavenly enforcers sent the soul race here. Dealing with the soul race is already tiring enough. Instead of focusing on the white world, you demons overestimate yourselves and scheme. If we don't stop, the trouble we'll have to deal with won't be as simple as the 3 palaces," Deadwood said. The White Ape Demon King was hesitant. He thought for a long time before saying, "I'll explain this to the Azure Dragon. We've all overlooked the details. But how did you know that the illness of the demons in the Valley of Dawn had something to do with this?" Deadwood was silent for a moment. After a long time, he slowly said, "I've been to the other side of the ruins." The ruins was a place filled with yellow poisonous fog. The demons were terrified and didn't dare to get too close. They didn't expect Deadwood to have been to the ruins. The White Ape Demon King looked at Deadwood thoughtfully. "Despairing Realm, your domain. I understand now. The ruins' poison isn't even worth mentioning in front of you. So that's how it is. Everyone underestimated you. It's rare for humans to have someone like you. No wonder Jian Ying and Qinfeng thought so highly of you. It's a pity that the other people in the cultivation world don't know how to appreciate a freak like you. It's their loss. It's useless for you to flatter me. I don't need others to appreciate me. You should know what you have to do," Deadwood said emotionlessly. "Then do you have a way to cure the illness of the demons?" "Yes." "How?" Chapter 1091. In the chaos of yin and yang, Mu Yu was so engrossed in his cultivation that he forgot to eat and sleep. He had already forgotten about the passage of time. Here, time seemed to slow down. The two types of chaos yin and yang intertwined, producing a special effect that gave Mu Yu more time to cultivate. The battle of the Xian immortals in the extreme immortal steel was about to begin. Mu Yu had to improve his cultivation as soon as possible. Mu Yu didn't know how long he had been cultivating. Maybe it was a month or two, but it didn't matter to him because the flow of time here was different from the flow of time outside. He only knew that his cultivation had reached the 9th heaven of tribulation passing stage, and now he was only one step away from the Great Ascension stage. From the crossing calamity stage to the Mahayana stage, you need to comprehend the rules of the heavenly Tao. There are thousands of laws in the heavenly Tao, and each law is difficult to understand. Take a ladle of water from thousands of weak water, choose the law that you have the deepest understanding of, and carefully refine it for your own use. Mu Yu carefully pondered over the words that Deadwood Daddy said to him. In his heart, his understanding of the heavenly Tao was still very abstract. He didn't know what kind of law was suitable for him. No matter what it was inevitable that everything that existed in this world would be bound by rules. Just like an unfathomable river that could block a person's path. For mortals, if they wanted to cross the river, they had to build a bridge or take a detour. This was a law. Cultivators knew how to use spells. They learned the ability to fly on swords, so they didn't need to take a detour or build a bridge. They could just fly across. Their ability was above mortals, and they weren't bound by the rules of mortals. People in the Great Ascension stage stood at the top of the cultivation world. Ordinary cultivators also had various restrictions, but people in the Great Ascension stage comprehended their own domain ability in a certain aspect, so that they wouldn't be bound by the rules. Mu Yu analyzed the domain abilities that he had seen so far. He wanted to comprehend some similar points from their domains. The true form of the White Ape Demon King was a huge ape with infinite strength. His domain ability was related to his own strength. Within the scope of his domain, his power was limitless. No one dared to fight him head-on because he could precisely control all of his power. For the White Ape Demon King, who had comprehended the rules of power, his use of power was better than anyone else's. The Sea Goblin King Yu Jiang was a king that lived in the sea. His domain ability was called My Lord's Rise and Fall. Within his domain, everyone would feel as if they were floating in the sea, and their movements would be greatly restricted. The Azure Dragon Demon Monarch was the proudest dragon. He believed himself to be incomparably noble, to the point where he could look down on everyone else. Thus, his domain was unique and no one dared to oppose him. In his domain, he was the only god. Others could only bow their heads to him. The Luan Phoenix Demon Monarch's true form was a fire phoenix. Fire phoenixes had powerful regenerative abilities. Thus, she was able to achieve a perfect immortal body. As long as the opponent's cultivation was not higher than hers, it would be very difficult to kill her. Taoist Master Xian Jizi's domain was called All Laws Return to Origin. The rules of his domain were to keep everything in a certain state. Within his domain, it could guarantee that everyone would not die and their souls would not be extinguished. When All Laws Return to Origin was used to the extreme, it could even transform other people's domains back to their original state. For example, the Sea Goblin King's powerful domain was at a disadvantage in front of All Laws Return to Origin. Dead Tree researched powerful poison technique. He had a deep understanding of all the strange poisons in the world. He understood all the principles of poison because within his domain, everyone would be corroded by the poisonous fog. Even spiritual energy would be infected by the poisonous fog. If one didn't have a physique like Mu Yu's, it would be impossible to resist the poisonous fog. The domains of the people from the third layer palace were slightly inferior compared to these people. However, they could not be underestimated because they had comprehended their own path within a certain law. For example, the palace envoy's 7 ultimates of the wild underworld. Within his domain, the attacks of the 7 snakes were everywhere. Everyone's domain ability was related to their own abilities. Thus, if Muyu wanted to comprehend his own law, he had to be sure of one thing. What was his specialty that was different from ordinary people? What am I good at? Muyu muttered to himself. Thick skin. Little Handsome ran in and said. Muyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Little Handsome, this is your specialty, right? If you can cultivate, will your future comprehension be narcissistic, gluttonous, and thick-skinned? Within your domain ability, everyone will become narcissistic and gluttonous, or will you become invulnerable? I don't need to use my domain ability to become invulnerable. Not only that, but I am also invincible. Little Handsome flicked out his sharp claws that were as thin as cicada's wings. There had never been anything that he couldn't cut with his claws. Then tell me about my specialty and give me a reference. Muyu shrugged and said. Little Handsome counted with his fingers seriously and said, Let me think. You like to flirt and often use little mo to threaten me. Sometimes you even restrict my food and make me hungry. You like to cause trouble and often cause a big mess. Although this is quite fun, you're not as handsome as me, your skin isn't as thick as mine, and you don't like to eat like me. What's the meaning of your life? Muyu knocked Little Handsome's head. So this is the meaning of your life? What else? Is there anything more important than eating? Little Handsome said unhappily. Then I don't have any good points? Good points. Little Handsome thought for a long time and said, You don't snore when you sleep at night. What else? Your hair is very thick. What else? The palm print on your right hand is very beautiful. The old faker said that your palm print means great wealth, and my palm print means that we don't have to worry about food and clothing. Our 2 swords are in harmony. Little Handsome showed his little hand to Muyu. His little hand also had human palm print. Is this also a good point? Yes, and your forehead is full and your forehead is peaceful. But your eyebrows are handsome, too thick. The old faker said that you are a dragon among men, but your life is full of ups and downs. What the hell is too thick eyebrows? How are my eyebrows thick? Are you trying to say that my eyebrows are handsome, but they are just curved? Yes, that's what the old faker said. How do you know? Because the village head grandpa told me a long time ago that he taught me facial reading when I was young. I have never believed in it. Muyu rudely rubbed Little Handsome's head. He was completely defeated by Little Handsome. It was impossible to count on Little Handsome, but he himself couldn't say what good points he had. Oh yes, you have a lot of ideas. That's called agile thinking. Perhaps Muyu's only good point was that his brain was more flexible than others. He was always one step faster in analyzing things than others. For example, in understanding the operation of the heaven ladder in the formation hall, he was so far the person who did the best. He could also rely on his powerful deduction ability to deal with anything, including dealing with the domain ability of the Great Ascension stage. Muyu's eyes lit up. His outstanding ability was in his thinking. Wasn't this his good point? Muyu's most powerful point was his deduction ability. When he was learning formation techniques, many complex formations could be easily cracked in front of him. When he was on the Demon Island, he broke into the suppressing demon tower of Taoist Master Xian Jizi by relying on his powerful deduction ability to deal with the people of the Gate of Hell. Then, could this powerful cracking ability also become his domain? There were all kinds of rules in the world, but no matter how powerful the rules were, there would always be more powerful means to break them. A Great Ascension stage cultivator could comprehend the rules of a domain, but the rules of this domain could also be cracked. Just like in the gambling city, Mu Yu relied on his powerful deduction ability to forcibly crack the domain of the Hall Envoy. Mu Yu pondered. Everything had its own rules. By mastering one of the rules, one could refine it into one's own domain. Then, mastering a cracking method to crack other domains was also a kind of rule. If he could comprehend this kind of domain, then he would have the absolute advantage when facing a great ascension stage cultivator. Mu Yu fell into deep thought again. When he reached the 9th heavenly layer, he could already preliminarily comprehend the heavenly Tao rules. In front of the heavenly Tao, everything seemed so small. He wanted to touch it, but he couldn't reach it. The heavenly Tao was obviously close to him, but it was far away. He had to find a way to break through that layer of obstacles. Xiao Shui yawned and walked out of the chaotic yin and yang. The space created by the chaotic yin and yang didn't hinder him at all. What does he think? Deadwood asked. Xiao Shui shook his head. He said he's smart and wants to deduce all the rules to create his own domain. He wants to deduce all the rules? Deadwood looked at Mu Yu from outside the ruin's opening cauldron. He knew that Mu Yu had a very powerful talent. Usually, he didn't have any bottlenecks during cultivation. However, the higher the cultivation level, the more important it was not just talent, but also temperament and comprehension. Mu Yu was also outstanding in these two aspects. However, that kind of destruction method was extremely difficult. Ordinary people couldn't grasp it at all because it required a deep understanding of the various heavenly Tao rules. However, there were thousands of rules in the heavenly Tao. It was extremely rare for an ordinary Great Ascension stage cultivator to be familiar with one. It was almost impossible to understand all of them. Deadwood frowned. It's unrealistic to comprehend that kind of domain. I don't know. Anyway, he thinks he can try. Xiao Shui said indifferently. That's impossible. It will only be a waste of time. Deadwood walked toward the chaotic yin and yang. He had to dissuade Mu Yu and tell Mu Yu how powerful the so-called heavenly Tao was. It wasn't something that could be deduced with time. However, halfway through, the chaotic yin and yang suddenly emitted a strange wave. His face sank, and he didn't go forward. Big Black and Big White said that Mu Yu has entered a very serious state. If you interrupt him, you will hurt Mu Yu, Xiao Shui explained. I know what Big Black and Big White mean. Deadwood was Big Black and Big White's master, after all. Deadwood chose to tacitly agree with Xiao Shui's decision to name his chaotic yin and yang as Big Black and Big White. He didn't say anything. Chapter 1092. If it were any other time, Ku Mu might let Mu Yu experience failure and learn from her mistakes. However, the current situation was obviously not the time for her to learn from her mistakes. Because the heavenly Tao was very complex, it would take a very long time to comprehend a single law. If Mu Yu wanted to deduce all the laws, it would undoubtedly take even more time. Didn't you tell him about the consequences? Xiao Shui asked curiously. Ku Mu shook his head. You need to rely on yourself to comprehend a domain. I didn't expect him to try this at first. However, it was too late to say anything now. Mu Yu took the wrong path. When he realized that it was too late, it was already too late. The battle of the Xian Immortals at the Extreme Immortal Monument would begin in a few days. Mu Yu would not be able to gain an advantage in front of the powerful soul race. Then what do you plan to do? Do you want me to go in and look for him? Xiao Shui asked. Ku Mu pondered for a long time. Then, he waved his hand. His domain ability, No Life in Despair, rolled out and merged with the chaotic yin and yang. Green poisonous fog mixed in and quickly spread out, enveloping Mu Yu. Ah? You want to poison Mu Yu to death? Even a vicious tiger will not eat its cubs. Xiao Shui exclaimed. Ku Mu snorted in disdain. If I could poison him to death, he would have had nothing to do with it. Mu used his own domain to support Yu, and let Yu use his domain as a model to deduce. This way, he would understand how difficult it was to comprehend a domain ability, let alone deduce other rules. In the pill hall, Taoist Yun Dan and Helian Kong were discussing the matters of the Danding sect. Now that the cultivation world was in turmoil, everyone was anxious. Although the Danding sect had closed its doors, they still needed to know the movements of the cultivation world at all times. Ancestor, there is news from the Array sect. Zhuge Shaoxing said that he needs to gather level 6 and level 7 pills and send them over, Taoist Yun Dan said. Helian Kong nodded. Leaving the Danding sect now is not a wise choice. We might be ambushed by the threefold palace. We need to be careful. Helian Kong continued to ask. That's right, 2 days ago, the opening ruins cauldron mysteriously appeared. Have you investigated it? Taoist Yun Dan was also rather puzzled. He shook his head and said, I've investigated this matter. The cauldron of opening ruins is fine, but I heard that there was a huge commotion over at Xianling sect. It seems that Xianling sect's territory has suffered heavy losses. I'm not sure what happened. Taoist Yun Dan, Helian Kong, and the others didn't know that Withered Tree had already arrived in the opening cauldron. They didn't even know that Yu had arrived at the Elixir Cauldron sect. This matter is rather strange. Send someone to investigate it. Who knows, there might be some movements from the threefold palace. We have to be prepared, said Helian Kong. Yes, Patriarch. Taoist Yun Dan nodded. Just as he was about to instruct someone to investigate this matter, a powerful aura suddenly engulfed the entire pill hall. There's no need to go. Mu's voice resounded in the pill palace. Who is it? Helian Kong's expression instantly changed because he could clearly sense that this aura belonged to the great vehicle stage. Taoist Yun Dan was also slightly startled. He revealed an expression of disbelief. He recognized this voice. Mu's illusory body had already appeared in the pill palace. Mu. Taoist Yun Dan was extremely shocked. Mu? You're that Mu Chongqing? No, Mu Chongqing is already dead. Who are you? Asked Helian Kong in a deep voice. It's me. Mu raised his hand. The Elixir Cauldron formation seal on Taoist Yun Dan's body was already in his hand. The owner of the Elixir Cauldron formation seal was Mu. This was the most powerful evidence. Taoist Yun Dan stared at Mu in a daze. He never expected Mu to come back to life. Elixir Cauldron formation seal, you're really... Helian Kong sized up Mu in shock. You've already recovered to the great vehicle stage? With the opening cauldron, I can unleash the strength that I had when I was alive. Mu nodded. Only then did Taoist Yun Dan react. He said with a complicated expression, Junior brother Mu, senior brother, you don't have to feel guilty. You didn't do anything wrong in this matter. Mu understood Taoist Yun Dan's feelings. All these years, Taoist Yun Dan had always felt guilty towards him. However, Mu left the Elixir Cauldron sect voluntarily. His choice had nothing to do with Taoist Yun Dan at all. However, Helian Kong was overjoyed. He said, You're that talented Mu Chongqing? Yu's master? I am. Helian Kong instantly beamed with joy. He laughed loudly and said, Good, good. Our Elixir Cauldron sect can be considered to have produced 2 outstanding talent. This is more like it. After the Elixir Cauldron sect suffered heavy losses, it had yet to fully recover. The deaths of the 2 Tribulation Transcendence Elders, Hong Yuan and Hong Yi, caused the Elixir Cauldron sect to be unable to recover. Fortunately, Yu took control of the opening cauldron in time and turned the situation around. In Helian Kong's opinion, Yu was also a member of the Elixir Cauldron sect. Regardless of whether Yu admitted it or not, Helian Kong naturally thought so. Mu, what exactly is going on? Taoist Yun Dan hurriedly asked. Mu hesitated for a moment and said, It's very complicated. I'm only here to remind you that there's no need to go to the Xianling sect to investigate anything. The matter has already passed. Then your body. Taoist Yundan sized up Ku Mu's illusory soul body and was somewhat puzzled. I'm now a soul. Ku Mu did not hide anything. Then should I go and tell Mu Yu? Helian Kong thought that he should tell Mu Yu about this matter. He already knows. There's another thing that I need you to do for me, Ku Mu said. What is it? Just say it, Helian Kong said. Ku Mu was now the only person in the Elixir Cauldron sect who was at the Great Vehicle stage. Even if he was only in a soul state, he was enough to protect the Elixir Cauldron sect and become their pillar of support. Helian Kong was extremely happy. What he hoped to see the most was nothing more than for the Elixir Cauldron sect to be able to pull themselves together. Send someone to the Array sect and pass this green jade to Zhuge Shaosheng. Ask him to personally make a trip to the demon race. A green jade with array patterns appeared in Ku Mu's hand. Go to the demon race? Helian Kong and Taoist Yundan were rather puzzled. Why did Ku Mu want Zhuge Shaosheng to go to the demon race at this time? Zhuge Shaosheng will understand. Ku Mu did not explain anything. Okay. Taoist Yundan did not say much either. After a while, he asked again, Does junior sister know that you've come back to life? Ku Mu was silent for a moment. I'll go and find her and make things clear. Helian Kong hurriedly said, There's also that person called Yuanda. He has yet to recover from the three-layered palace. After all, he's in the tribulation stage. I heard that your medical skills are superb. Do you have a way to help him? Although I know that something happened to you because he left halfway back then, after all, this matter. Taoist Yuanda lost his memory because he removed the divine soul array and became delirious. Now that the Pill Cauldron sect lacked experts, it would naturally be best if they could help Taoist Yuanda recover. However, Helian Kong was worried that Ku Mu would blame Taoist Yuanda. What happened to me has nothing to do with him. I'll go and see him. Ku Mu turned and disappeared. Mu Yu's entire body was enveloped by a green poisonous fog. The heavenly Tao was illusory. When his cultivation reached a certain level, he could already sense some of the heavenly Tao rules that circulated around him. For example, when did the lotus bloom? When did the sun break through the clouds? Why did the leaves fall in autumn? Why was the world filled with spiritual power? Why would an egg break when it was smashed against a rock? These were all rules set by the heavenly Tao. Everything followed the rules of the heavenly Tao and proceeded in an orderly manner. There were countless rules in the world. Mu Yu felt as if he was in a vast sea. He was a small boat in the boundless sea. All the heavenly Tao rules were waves. He seemed so small as he wandered in the sea of heavenly Tao. Sometimes a huge wave could crush him. However, Mu Yu was not worried at all when facing these tumbling waves. He emptied his mind and body and went with the flow, turning himself into a wave in the sea. In his opinion, since there were all kinds of rules in the world, then his existence was also a kind of rule in a way. Therefore, even in the face of the turbulent waves, he faced them calmly. After he imagined himself as a kind of rule of the heavenly Tao, his whole person became much more relaxed. There were big and small rules. He imagined himself as a person, a member of all living things. People had to be born, grow old, get sick, and die. He unintentionally broke free from this rule, so he was more special than ordinary people. If he did not use spiritual power, the power of the earth would prevent him from flying. He could only walk on the ground. This was also the rule of the heavenly Tao. However, if he used spiritual power, he could break free from the power of the earth. However, he could still fly. No matter how fast he was, there was still a limit. It was impossible to reach the point where he could cross 108,000 miles with a thought. This was also the rule of the heavenly Tao. Each rule was layered, but if a person thought that he had broken free from some secular shackles, he would find that there were more powerful rules to bind him. The heavenly Tao ensured that no matter how powerful a person was, they would be restricted by various rules. The only powerful thing about the Deshang stage was that they could reasonably use a certain rule and refine it into their own domain ability. They could control a rule, and in their own domain ability, everyone had to follow the rule they had mastered. Unless the opponent was strong enough to break this rule, they would be seriously affected. Mu Yu wandered in Deadwood's desperation. In desperation, everything would be infected by the poisonous fog. Even spiritual power was not spared. This was the rule that Deadwood had mastered. Mu Yu himself was a special existence in the desperation domain. He used the rule that Deadwood had mastered to deduce other rules. When he found that some rules could not be understood, he would imagine himself as part of the rule and comprehend it. However, he soon discovered that something was wrong. He realized that if he wanted to deduce Deadwood's father's domain, he would have to spend a lot of time, let alone deduce all of the Heavenly Way's rules. It seems that I am biting off more than I can chew. With so many Heavenly Tao rules, it is impossible for me to deduce all of them in tens of thousands of years. Mu Yu already understood why Deadwood Daddy used desperation on him. It was to remind him of this truth. If this path doesn't work, then what rule can I comprehend? Chapter 1093. Any rule could not be understood so easily, let alone be refined so easily. This was also the reason why there were so few people in the Deshang stage. When many people reached the 9th heavenly layer of the crossing tribulation stage, they felt confused when facing the rules of heaven. They did not understand which rule they should master. Everyone wanted to master a powerful rule. No one wanted to master a simple rule. Think about it, the heavenly Tao laws that others grasped were all destructive. For example, one wouldn't be able to move or fly within a domain. But if he grasped a simple law like flower bloom and flower wilt, then when he fought with others, all the plants and flowers within his domain would be under his control. Apart from being fun, there was no offensive power at all. How could he fight with others? All the self-cultivators in the 9th heaven of the crossing calamity stage knew that people's energy was limited. Therefore, when choosing rules, they would combine their best abilities to find the rules of the way of heaven that matched their abilities. Only the rules of the way of heaven that were destined to be with them could be refined into their own field of power. No one would casually choose a simple rule of flowers blooming and withering or eggs will break when hitting a stone as their own field ability. Opportunity, perception, choice, these three were quite important. None of them could be missing. After mastering one rule, it is basically impossible to comprehend the second one. This is also a rule that heaven restricts the Deshang stage. No wonder everyone only has one field ability. The masters of the Deshang stage that Mu Yu had seen only had one ability. At first, he wondered why these immortal people like the White Ape Demon King did not take advantage of their long lives to master a few additional rules. But after he gradually came into contact with the rules of the Heavenly Tao, he understood that the Deshang stage cultivators were also limited by more powerful rules, so they did not have many domains. So I am an exception, right? Mu Yu thought. Life was full of surprises everywhere. His existence seemed to break the rule that the Deshang stage could only have one field ability because he could already use life and death in the blink of an eye, but he could also comprehend another rule, which was completely different from others. However, Mu Yu was not complacent because he was pondering. His existence was also under the rules of the Heavenly Tao, so would the Heavenly Tao use other rules to restrict him? If I want to grasp all the rules, I'll have to be the Heavenly Tao. However, that doesn't seem very possible. I can't even grasp a small rule of the Heavenly Tao, so how can I even think about that? Mu Yu simply lay down and wandered aimlessly in the rules set by the Heavenly Tao, experiencing them one by one. He saw many familiar heavenly axiom rules, such as the wind can blow leaves into the sky, water flows from high places to low places, mortals must eat to survive, and a shout in the mountain stream will have a magical echo. None of the ninth heavenly tribulation stage self-cultivators would master these common and familiar rules, because these rules were of little value to them and had no meaning at all. The ninth heavenly tribulation stage self-cultivators would think of ways to master the rules with powerful lethality, such as being the strongest in their own domain, or being the fastest, or being the only one who could control the spiritual power, and others could not use it. Or like Gomong's life and death in the blink of an eye, being swept by the black light will definitely die, and being swept by the white light can revive. This kind of rule was so powerful that it was somewhat abnormal. However, the more powerful the domain ability, the more restrictions it would have because the domain ability was also bound by more powerful rules. For example, although the life and death in the blink of an eye was powerful, the speed of the attack was extremely slow. In the same realm, it was not easy to hit the opponent. Everyone in the Mahayana stage could basically dodge the attack speed of the white light and the black light. Powerful but not easy to hit the opponent, this was another rule that limited the life and death in the blink of an eye. Another example was Deadwood Daddy's no life in the impasse. Anything could be corroded by the poisonous fog, but it just had no effect on someone with a constitution like Muyu. Not only was it ineffective on Muyu, it was probably ineffective on all Mu-Yumeng. This was also the rule that limited the no life in the impasse. Another example was the Sea Demon King's My Lord Rises and Falls. It was so powerful that people could not move freely within it, but Taoist Master Xian Jizi's all laws return to origin could make the Sea Demon King's My Lord Rises and Falls ineffective. This was the rule that limited the My Lord Rises and Falls. Muyu imagined that any Mahayana stage self-cultivator's domain ability would be limited by other rules, and the rule that limited a certain domain ability was the weakness of that domain ability. Last time, I relied on my deduction ability to discover the weakness of the Palace Envoy's domain ability, 7 Arts of the Wild Underworld. This means that I also unintentionally used some rules to restrain the 7 arts of the wild underworld. This is truly a miraculous process. Muyu pondered. Since he had a powerful deduction ability, and his brain was a bit smarter than others, did that mean that his deduction ability could also become a type of rule? If deduction ability was a type of rule, then how exactly was it manifested? If I were to deduce simple rules, would it really be useless? Muyu deduced some simple rules in his mind, such as blowing away dust with a single breath. The simpler the rule, the easier it was to grasp, but since ancient times, no one would refine such a rule for their own use, because the rule of blowing away dust did not need to wait until the 9th heaven of tribulation transcendence to grasp. It could already be grasped when one was a child. But what if this rule was magnified, for example, to blowing away anything with a single breath, including any spell that comes at you? Then this does not belong to the category of simple, but rather a rule that is quite difficult to grasp. Muyu's eyes suddenly lit up because he understood a law. No law existed on its own. It must have started from the shallow to the deep, from the simple to the complex. In other words, even the simplest law could be developed to a very profound level, and even the most complex law could be transformed from the simple. If we take the no life out of desperation domain as an example, the poisonous fog could only erode the spiritual energy of Qi refining stage self-cultivators at the beginning, then later it could erode the spiritual energy of foundation establishment stage self-cultivators, and then during the Jindan period, it deepened one stage after another, and now it can erode the spiritual energy of Mahayana stage self-cultivators. This means that when Dad first grasped this domain, he did not do it overnight, but went from simple to deep. This is the way to master the heavenly Tao rules. Muyu smiled. He finally figured out how to refine the heavenly Tao rules, which meant that if he wanted to master the profound domain rules, he had to start from simple. And the simple rule of blooming and withering at will, like blooming and withering at any time, would probably be transformed into life and death in the blink of an eye when it reached a profound level. So it is unrealistic to bite off more than one can chew. Everything has to be done from simple. This is a straightforward and profound truth. I think that after understanding this truth, everyone should know how to master the powerful heavenly Tao rules, right? Muyu thought that this should be common sense. But in fact, he was wrong. This was not common sense. Refining the heavenly Tao rules from simple to deep was not seen by everyone in this way. Everyone's understanding of the heavenly Tao rules was different, and very few people would choose to refine the heavenly Tao rules from simple to deep. After anyone's cultivation reached the 9th heaven of tribulation stage, they would definitely choose to master the powerful heavenly Tao rules. They would not focus on the simple rule of blooming and withering of flowers, which was so simple that it made people feel that it was useless. Those powerful heavenly Tao rules had to be mastered according to one's own situation and certain opportunities. It was very difficult, but everyone would not hesitate to spend a huge amount of time to comprehend it. Many 9th heaven of tribulation stage cultivators might spend a year, 10 years, or even 50 years to master a rule. There were even some who would be trapped in this realm for their entire lives, unable to break through. Even Dead Tree did not start from simple, but directly chose to refine the complicated heavenly Tao rules. However, Dead Tree had a very deep understanding of the Poison Tao, and his talent was outstanding, so the domain he comprehended was very powerful, and it only took him a year. However, Muyu believed that many things could be mastered from a young age. Any rule was embedded in each other, so there was nothing wrong with being familiar with the rule of blooming and withering of flowers. The only one who had the same idea as Muyu was Jian Ying and Chen Feng. Master used to say that life is all about cultivation, growing vegetables and cooking rice, doing everything personally, and any small matter is worth paying attention to. He slowly deduced the rules that were so simple that it made people's hair stand on end. He pondered over the rule of a blunt iron sharpened to chop firewood, and then he deduced the rule of water extinguishes fire. He even deduced the rule of a stone falling into a calm lake causes ripples in the shape of circles. He did not seem to be refining the heavenly Tao rules, but more like he was experiencing life and observing the world. The world was made up of countless rules, and observing these rules made him feel very happy. The simpler the rule, the less difficult it was to deduce. Therefore, he was very happy to deduce it. There were many common simple rules in the world, and Muyu was wandering among them. He only deduced the principle of one rule, but did not refine it. Instead, he continued to deduce other rules. Soon, his understanding of the rules became deeper and deeper. He even knew that when a rule was slightly changed, it would become another rule. Gradually, his heart became clearer. Suddenly, he seemed to understand what the heavenly Tao rules that he was fated with was. He slowly searched for that feeling, to touch that unreachable heavenly Tao. He seemed to have found some guidance in the dazzling array of heavenly Tao rules. Chapter 1094. 7th of October. There was only one day left before the Battle of the Xian Immortals. Within the Kai Su cauldron, Ku Mu was somewhat uneasy. The space created by the primal yin and yang had already been sealed. At this moment, even he had no way of knowing what had happened to Muyu inside. Don't worry, nothing will happen to him. He has been working hard while you were away. Leng Bingxue said. Her gaze towards Ku Mu was filled with tenderness. The man she had been dreaming about had finally woken up. Although he was just a soul, she was still satisfied. When she saw Ku Mu that day, she felt as though a lifetime had passed. She threw herself into Ku Mu's embrace. Even though Ku Mu was just a soul and was cold to the bone, she still felt warm. Ku Mu's expression eased a little. "I'm sorry, I still can't restore his memories." His gaze turned towards the fearful Taoist Yuanda in the corner of the Kai Su cauldron and sighed. Taoist Yuanda was hit by the soul array of the Triple Palace and was forcefully undone by Muyu. This caused his memories to be in chaos and he was still in a daze. Ku Mu had already tried many methods, but Taoist Yuanda's brain was severely injured. He was helpless. Right now, Taoist Yuanda was like an ignorant child who had forgotten his identity and the fact that he was a cultivator. He did not even know that he was once a tribulation passing stage expert, nor did he know how to use his spiritual energy. Ling Bingshu walked over and held Taoist Yuanda's hand. "Let him forget about the past. He is fine like this." Taoist Yuanda could only rely on his daughter now. "Ghost, ghost, don't come over." Taoist Yuanda looked at the illusory Ku Mu in horror and kept shrinking back. Ku Mu had a complicated expression. He had brought Taoist Yuanda into the Kai Su cauldron and wanted to use the special spirit energy of the Kai Su cauldron to heal him. However, he was still unable to succeed. In the past, the two of them did not see eye to eye and would quarrel with each other. However, they were just angry words. Now that Taoist Yuanda had become like this, Ku Mu sighed in his heart. After a moment of silence, he waved his hand and green array runes rolled out, forming an illusory array and bringing Taoist Yuanda into the illusory array. When Taoist Yuanda saw that he had returned to his familiar residence, he calmed down. "I heard that the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard will be open tomorrow. Since Mu Yu hasn't woken up yet, is he going?" Lung Bingshu asked. Ku Mu nodded. "The identities of the 9 Xian Immortals are very important. The people of the Threefold Palace also attach great importance to this. If Mu Yu can go, he will definitely be able to find a way to interfere with the plans of the Threefold Palace. However, he is currently comprehending the Tao. I cannot interfere with him." Now that the Array sect and the Pill Cauldron sect had called for it, everyone knew that tomorrow would be the battle of the Xian Immortals. At that time, there would definitely be many talented people heading to the Extreme Immortal Monument. Mu Yu naturally couldn't be absent. Ling Bingshu said, "Mu Yu still has 3 powerful senior martial brothers. They will definitely be there. The Threefold Palace probably won't have a chance to get all 9 Xian Immortals." Ku Mu shook his head. "The goal of the Threefold Palace isn't to get all 9 Xian Immortals, but to get at least one. Once we get one, it will be impossible to activate the 9 mystical heaven battle formation and borrow the heavenly eternal power to fight against Bai Jie. To the Threefold Palace, they only need 1 Xian Immortal Monument. If Mu Yu is there, he should be able to get 1 Xian Immortal Monument. This way, the Threefold Palace will have less hope. Without him, the Threefold Palace will have more confidence." Ku Mu knew a lot about the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. He understood why the Threefold Palace cared so much about the 9 Xian Immortals on the Extreme Immortal Leaderboard. It was because the 9 Xian Immortals could control the heavenly eternal power. The heavenly eternal power was the strongest power in the Threefold Heaven. Even Bai Jie couldn't resist it. But the Threefold Palace only needed 1 Xian Immortal Monument. If one of the 9 Xian Immortals didn't cooperate, the heavenly eternal power wouldn't be able to be used and the Threefold Palace would be able to do whatever they wanted. Hence, the Threefold Palace needed to control one of the 9 Xian Immortals. How exactly does the Extreme Immortal Leaderboard select the 9 Xian Immortals? Ling Bingshu couldn't help but ask. Ku Mu said seriously, "The Extreme Immortal Monument's selection method is very cruel. In the space created by the Extreme Immortal Monument, danger is everywhere. Even a great ascension stage self-cultivator might not be able to get one of the 9 Xian Immortals. If the opportunity is right, the 99th Immortal Monument can become one of the 9 Xian Immortals. Although the probability is very low, it's not impossible. Not even a great ascension stage cultivator? Lung Bingxue was shocked. She didn't expect the extreme Immortal Monument to be so strange. Great ascension stage cultivators stood at the peak of the self-cultivation world, but even they didn't have absolute confidence in becoming one of the 9 Xian Immortals. Then what was the rule of the extreme Immortal Monument? Kumu didn't say anything else. He just looked at the space created by the chaos yin and yang. The runes in all directions flashed with light and miraculously resonated with the chaos yin and yang. The extreme Immortal Monument was located in the center of the 3 continents. It stood in the sky above a winding valley. The bottom of the valley was unfathomable, like the entrance to hell. Strong gales blew out from time to time. This valley was called the Extreme Immortal Rift Valley. The Rift Valley was 3,000 feet wide and 900 miles long. It was as if the entire continent was split in the middle, forming a rift. This huge Rift Valley didn't originally exist, but it was formed when the Extreme Immortal Monument was born. It was said that the Extreme Immortal Monument, which symbolized the supreme power of the younger generation in the self-cultivation world, rose from the bottom of the Rift Valley. The bottom of the rift was shrouded in a thick fog. No one knew what was at the bottom. Some curious self-cultivators went down, but the deeper they went, the stronger the gales in the Rift Valley. They were strong enough to tear a body integration stage self-cultivator to pieces. After the gales killed a few self-cultivators who didn't know what was good for them, everyone finally understood that the Rift Valley was an absolute forbidden area. They couldn't go down and explore. The gales in the Rift Valley didn't exist all the time. They appeared in the form of white tornadoes. They were formed from the cliffs on both sides of the Rift Valley. They wandered around the Rift Valley, killing anyone who stepped in. Those who were hit by the gales would be torn to shreds. The Extreme Immortal Monument floated in the center of the Rift Valley. It was 2 feet wide and 100 feet tall. The names and rankings of the 99 Extreme Immortals were engraved on it. It was surrounded by mysterious and complicated runes. This was an important place in the self-cultivation world. No one dared to blaspheme this divine monument. On the 7th day of the 10th lunar month, countless self-cultivators had arrived at the 2 sides of the Rift Valley. 5 kilometers away from the Rift Valley, some smart merchants had already built several inns and rented them to the self-cultivators for a high price. With so many self-cultivators gathered here, this place had already become a crowded and lively market town. Although there were only 99 people participating in the Extreme Immortal Battle, how could there only be Extreme Immortals? Many people had occupied the best spots on the nearby mountains or cliffs, preparing to witness the Extreme Immortal Battle. The opening of the Extreme Immortal Battle this time had attracted hundreds of thousands of people. Almost all the self-cultivators with a reputation had already arrived. They attached great importance to the 9 mystic immortals battle that could lead the self-cultivation world. Therefore, there was already a sea of people here. However, no one dared to come within 500 meters of the Rift Valley. Whether it was the 5 Mountains Alliance or the various major sects, they all had powerful body integration experts. They all treated this matter seriously and stood at the boundary line 500 meters away from the Extreme Immortal Monument. They consciously made space for the Extreme Immortals. Other self-cultivators with lower cultivation levels did not dare to cross the line in front of them. Only 99 Extreme Immortals could enter this area. Today was the 7th day of the 10th lunar month. At this time, more than half of the Extreme Immortals had arrived. Some of them had already entered the area, while others were still waiting outside with their own sect elders. Many Extreme Immortals were nervous and excited. This was because the mystic immortals who could be on the list were all favored by the heavens. Even though they knew that their chances of competing for the 9 Mystic Immortals battle were slim, they still wanted to participate. This was a supreme honor that they were proud of. Moreover, there was news that anyone on the Extreme Immortal leaderboard had a high chance of becoming one of the 9 Mystic Immortals. As long as their luck was strong enough, even the last person on the Extreme Immortal leaderboard could become one of the 9 Mystic Immortals. Those who were younger and had lower cultivation levels all had a trace of hope in their hearts. Perhaps they might be the legendary person with great vitality. The Extreme Immortals on the Extreme Immortal leaderboard received the most attention. They were the top 50 Extreme Immortals. It could be said that the top 50 was a watershed for the Extreme Immortals. The lowest cultivation level of the top 50 Extreme Immortals was at the Severed Soul stage. Those who could break through to the Severed Soul stage before the age of 40 would be highly valued by any sect. The top 30 Extreme Immortals were even more powerful. This was because the top 30 Extreme Immortals' cultivation levels were at least at the body integration stage. They were the favored by the heavens that any sect would focus on nurturing. As for the top 20 Extreme Immortals, many people already knew how terrifying they were. This was because they were the true elites of the cultivation world. Their cultivation levels were basically at the tribulation stage. The oldest person on the Extreme Immortal leaderboard was only 39 years old. Those who could break through to the tribulation stage before the age of 40 were rare existences among the ordinary 8 sects. That is Nyeyuyu from the Absolute Heaven sect. He is ranked 31st in the Extreme Immortal leaderboard. He is a rising star recently. It is said that his cultivation has already reached the body integration stage. His true strength is stronger than his actual ranking. I have also heard of him. I heard that he killed a 5th heavenly layer of body integration stage expert last time. What a terrifying person! A young man in black robes, holding a long spear, sat at the edge of the valley. His robes fluttered in the wind. His expression was calm as he stared indifferently at the supreme celestial monument floating in the air. This person was Nyeyuyu from the Absolute Heaven sect. The Absolute Heaven sect was an unknown sect. It was only because of Nyeyuyu's existence that the world knew about it. At this moment, a graceful young woman floated over and landed on a protruding rock at the edge of the Extreme Immortal Valley. She was quite a distance away from Nyeyu. That woman is Hu Yunying from the Spirit Wings mansion. Previously, she was only ranked 52nd in the Extreme Immortal leaderboard. Yesterday, she actually defeated Wu Wen, who was ranked 28th in the Extreme Immortal leaderboard. You must know that Wu Wen is an expert at the 6th heavenly layer of body integration stage. This Hu Yunying is really good at hiding her strength. She is not the only one who is good at hiding her strength. Do you see the person ranked 19th in the Extreme Immortal leaderboard? Yuma? Chapter 1095. How terrifying! How many hidden talents are there among these 99 Extreme Immortals? The people in the surroundings were all discussing the youths who were able to enter the 2 sides of the Extreme Immortal Rift Valley. At this time, there were already 56 Extreme Immortals gathered on the 2 sides of the valley. Every one of them was a famous young genius. Now that they were so talented, as long as they were given time to grow, their futures would definitely be limitless. Swoosh! A golden light streaked across the sky like a meteor. It flew through the air with a sharp whistling sound and landed not far from Nyeyu. A tyrannical wave of chi rolled out and attracted everyone's attention. This was a man in a golden robe. He looked to be about 28 or 29 years old. He had an arrogant expression, sword-like eyebrows, and a red mole in the center of his forehead. It looked like a third eye. It looked very strange. Ding Wuming of the Golden Plume sect. He is ranked 49th among the Extreme Immortals. He is also a very powerful genius. Such a big show. I don't know if he has the ability to be arrogant. Some people had already recognized this man in the golden robe. He came to the edge of the extreme immortal rift valley and caused a huge commotion. It was as if he was deliberately attracting everyone's attention. Many people were quite dissatisfied with this man in the golden robe. Within 500 meters of the extreme immortal rift valley, all the extreme immortals were quiet. Only he came in and caused a huge commotion. Ding Wuming revealed a proud smile and slowly walked toward Nyeyuyu, who was sitting on the cliff wall. You are the 31st Nyeyuyu? Ding Wuming stared at Nyeyuyu and said. So what if I am? Nyeyuyu raised his head indifferently. The long spear in his hand made a soul-stirring sound. Ding Wuming stood in front of Nyeyuyu and said coldly, You killed my junior brother Zuimo. Have you forgotten so quickly? Nyeyuyu replied indifferently, I never remember the names of the souls that died under my spear. Ding Wuming suddenly sneered. You are right. There is no need to remember the names of the dead. There is no need for your name in the future. A golden light suddenly bloomed from Ding Wuming's hand. It was gorgeous and colorful. In the blink of an eye, it rushed toward Nyeyuyu. Nyeyuyu's eyes instantly became extremely sharp. The long spear in his hand was as fast as lightning. With the sound of wind and thunder, he had already met Ding Wuming. Whoosh! The power of the form synthesis stage swept out instantly like a raging sea. Their fight set off layers of airwaves that rolled out in all directions. Ding Wuming, who ranked 49th, was also at the form synthesis stage. Bang! Smoke and dust filled the air, and a figure was sent flying backward. Scarlet blood splashed in the air, and the figure crashed heavily on the ground, making an incomparably dull sound. When he looked again, he was no longer breathing. Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that a battle between extreme immortals would break out at this critical juncture, and there were even casualties. Shockingly, the person who died was Nyeyuyu, who was ranked 31st. Ding Wuming actually killed Nyeyuyu? Many people were secretly shocked. Who would have thought that the proud and arrogant Ding Wuming had actually hidden his strength and killed Nyeyuyu in a single exchange of blows? At this moment, the extreme immortal symbols had been exchanged, and Ding Wuming's ranking had risen to 31st. The 49th place on the extreme immortal leaderboard was now empty. After a moment of silence, the symbol of the 49th place flew into the distance. It disappeared into the crowd and landed on a man. I'm ranked 49th? This man's name was Pang Chengtong. His cultivation was also at the severed soul stage, and he was already 39 years old. His talent and potential were not considered top-notch. Not everyone liked the killings on the extreme immortal leaderboard. This man belonged to the category of people who didn't want to be on the leaderboard. He had deliberately lost his ranking and dropped out of the extreme immortal leaderboard. There would never be a vacancy on the extreme immortal leaderboard. When a person died, another person would definitely take his place. There were tens of millions of people in the 3 continents and countless people of the younger generation. However, the path of cultivation was very difficult. Not many people could break through to the severed soul stage before the age of 40. Those who could be on the leaderboard were basically the geniuses of the younger generation. After all, in the whole world, people like Mu Yu were very few. The extreme immortal tablet knew all the young people in the cultivation world who met the requirement. The people it selected were not necessarily powerful, but they definitely had extraordinary potential. The extreme immortal leaderboard was updated every day. It had its own way of determining the number of extreme immortals. These were all uncertain things, and there was no need for others to worry about it. Mu Yu had once shattered some of the extreme immortal leaderboards. However, when his ranking fluctuated, the extreme immortal tablet would sense it and replace the broken extreme immortal leaderboards. Ding Wuming had openly killed Nyeyuyu, which alarmed everyone. Those who were not as strong as Nyeyuyu did not dare to make a sound, because Ding Wuming was enough to kill them. No one dared to stand up for Nyeyu. Ding Wuming looked at Nyeyu's corpse. He walked over and kicked Nyeyu into the extreme, immortal rift valley. Nyeyu's body kept falling. Soon, it was crushed into pieces by a strong wind. Dead people don't need to be remembered, Ding Wuming sneered. Then, he arrogantly glanced at the other extreme immortals. His arrogant attitude made many people feel disgusted. However, no one dared to make a sound because Ding Wuming had the right to be arrogant. Ding Wuming saw that he had attracted everyone's attention. His expression was extremely arrogant. He held his head high and walked towards a stone with an extremely wide field of vision. There was an elegant young man who looked to be in his 20s sitting on the stone. He wore brown hemp clothes which were simple and crude. This was an itinerant cultivator named Ku Feishin. He was ranked 48th on the Extreme Immortal Leaderboard on his wrist. I've taken a liking to this position, Ding Wuming said lazily. He saw the Extreme Immortal Leaderboard on Ku Feishin's wrist. Just now, he had used his actions to show everyone his strength. He didn't care about someone who was only ranked 48. Ku Feishin smiled slightly. I got here first. He didn't move aside. Everyone was sweating for Ku Feishin. One had to know that Ding Wuming's strength was obvious to all. If Ku Feishin knew what was good for him, he would move aside in fear and trepidation. If you don't want to die, piss off, Ding Wuming sneered. Ku Feishin nodded. You're right. That's what I wanted to tell you. Whoosh. Ku Feishin had already extended his hand. His hand left an afterimage in the air as a brown cloud and mist enshrouded Ding Wuming. His speed was unbelievably fast. Before anyone had a chance to react, a blood-curdling cry suddenly erupted from within the brown cloud and mist. Gulp! Gulp! Ding Wuming's head had already rolled out of the brown cloud and mist. It rolled a few times on the ground before falling into the extreme, immortal rift valley. Silence. Complete silence. Everyone's eyes widened. No one had thought that things would be so dramatic. The 49th ranked Ding Wuming had just killed the 31st ranked Nyeyu. His extreme immortal leaderboard hadn't even lasted for 15 minutes before he was killed by the 48th ranked Ku Feishin. So there really were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers on the extreme immortal leaderboard? All of the spectating cultivators were burning with excitement. They looked at Ku Feishin with awe and veneration in their eyes. The deaths of two people in quick succession didn't shock them. Instead, they were all filled with anticipation. Just how many hidden dark horses were there on the Extreme Immortal Leaderboard? The 2 consecutive changes in the Extreme Immortal Leaderboard made the spectating cultivators' hearts burn with excitement. The highest cultivation level of the 2 was only at the body integration stage. Although the battle between the body integration stage cultivators was spectacular, it was only an appetizer for many people. The real dark horses had yet to appear. Everyone was looking forward to the arrival of the Extreme Immortal Tribulation stage cultivators. This battle between the profound immortals was definitely going to be spectacular. After killing the arrogant Ding Wuming, Ku Feishin didn't say anything. He just continued to sit in his seat and closed his eyes to rest. After this small interlude, no extreme immortals attacked again. Apart from the arrogant Ding Wuming, many extreme immortals would rather spend their energy on the profound immortal battle tomorrow. That was the battlefield where they would display their true strength. 10 miles north of the extreme immortal Rift Valley, there was a mountain peak. This mountain peak was originally a barren mountain. However, some merchants had built unique huts on it and sold them at a high price. These huts were filled with all kinds of cultivators. The entire mountain peak was like a sect. From time to time, cultivators would fly across the sky and land in a corner of the mountain peak. At the top of the mountain peak, there was a luxurious courtyard. It was the gathering place of the 5 Mountains Alliance. A powerful soul spell barrier was set up here. No cultivators dared to cross it. The courtyard was filled with the leaders of the 5 sections. The leader of the Star Gate, Tian Yuehen, the leader of the Earth Emperor sect, Xiong Feiyang, the leader of the Xianling sect, Qiu Zhe Daoist, the leader of the Jade sect, Fairy Chu Yun, the leader of the Life and Death sect, Qi Luo Wang, and the leader of the Gu Sha sect, Yang Tiansha. Although the Star Gate was destroyed, Tian Yuehen was still alive as the leader of the sect. The 5 Mountains Alliance was led by 6 people. In addition, there was the Sword Washing Valley's leader, Sword of Reincarnation, and many other influential figures. In total, there were 40 Tribulation Passing Stage cultivators. Any one of these 40 Crossing Calamity Stage cultivators was a powerful figure in the cultivation world. Now that they were all gathered together, if someone with weak cultivation walked into this courtyard, they would probably be so intimidated by their powerful aura that they wouldn't even be able to breathe freely. Most of these people were the backbone of the sections. They were very old and belonged to the older generation. Naturally, they were gathered here for the profound immortal battle tomorrow. No one spoke. Everyone seemed a little nervous, as if they were waiting for something. Chapter 1096. Each of the 40 Tribulation Passing Stage experts was capable of stirring up a storm. However, they were all kneeling on the ground at this moment. If the people of the cultivation world saw this, they would probably be extremely shocked. A sacred white light appeared on the main seat. This person's aura was like the sun in the sky. He was like a war god, suppressing the 40 Tribulation Passing Stage experts until they couldn't breathe. Hun Kuei, a powerful Great Ascension Stage expert. Rise. Hun Kuei's voice was like rolling thunder that reverberated in everyone's ears, making everyone solemn. Yes. These Tribulation Passing Stage seniors stood up submissively and stood quietly at the side, waiting for the Great Ascension Stage Hun Kuei's instructions. Hun Kuei was enveloped in the white light as he scanned the 40 Tribulation Passing Stage expert. The 5 Mountains Alliance was actually just a pawn in the hands of the Threefold Palace. The Threefold Palace controlled all of these people, which was equivalent to controlling the top power of the Threefold Continent. These people were famous in the cultivation world. When one of them made a move, no one dared to disobey. Controlling these people was equivalent to controlling the cultivation world. However, Hun Kuei understood that these people were far from enough to deal with some people in the cultivation world. Although these 40 people were very experienced, none of them were a match for Mu Yu, Qingyan, and the others. If he wanted to truly control the cultivation world, he still needed to get rid of the restless elements like Mu Yu. Are those people here yet? Hun Kuei asked majestically. Tian Yuehen stood up respectfully and said, "My lord, none of the people you asked us to pay attention to have shown up." None of them have shown up? It seems that their vigilance is really strong. Hun Kuei said coldly. Everyone lowered their heads, not daring to look at the war god like Hun Kuei. Have you instructed your people on what to do for the mystic immortal battle tomorrow? Hun Kuei continued asking. Yes, we're following your orders. Everyone replied respectfully again. That's good. Now that we've captured Demon King Tianqian, it's equivalent to capturing the 9th person with eternal life. Then, as long as we obtain one of the 9 mystic immortals, those people led by Mu Yu will no longer have the ability to fight against us. If they can't use the power of Tianheng, they can forget about fighting us. Tian Yuehen and the others said again, "We understand." Hun Kuei's goal was very clear. The most powerful thing in the 3rd heaven was the power of the eternal heaven. Only the power of the eternal heaven was enough to make the members of the Soul Clan afraid. However, there were only 2 ways to use the power of Tianheng. One was to rely on the 9 immortals to activate the 9 heavens reversal formation. The other was to rely on the power of 9 Xian immortals to activate the 9 profound heaven battle formation. Now that they had captured Demon King Heavenly Qian, the first method would not work. All that was left was the second method. The threefold palace relied on the Five Mountains alliance to coerce many extreme immortals into working for them. As long as any of the extreme immortals they arranged occupied one of the 9 Xian immortals, the power of heavenly eternity could no longer be used. Hun Kuei sneered from the bottom of his heart, neither side will use the power of Tianheng. Wait until Master unseals Jian, Ying and Chen Feng. At that time, the entire third heaven, Jian Ying Chen Feng, no matter how powerful your disciple is, he won't be able to stop this from happening. Hun Kuei thought of Master's plan and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This plan was enough to make the third heaven unable to resist. All 40 of you, stay alert. If you see any of the people I mentioned today, don't act rashly and alert them. You must report back to me. You are no match for them. Hun Kuei said. Yes. Hun Kuei nodded with satisfaction. With 40 tribulation stage experts who were rather prestigious in the cultivation world working for him, things would definitely be much simpler. Hun Kuei listed a total of 10 people who were most likely to become one of the 9 Xian immortals. Among them, the 4 disciples of Jian, Ying and Chen Feng were among them. The rest were Gu Yitian, Shimen Wuji, Wan, and the disciples of some hidden great ascension stage experts in the third heaven. Hun Kuei planned to find an opportunity to kill these people halfway and not give them the chance to participate in the competition for the 9 Xian immortals. As long as they killed even one of them, the chances of them obtaining one of the 9 Xian immortals would be higher. Hun Kuei stood up. Then he turned into a white light and disappeared from the courtyard. After he left, Tian Yuehen and the others breathed a sigh of relief. For them, the great ascension stage Hun Kuei was an unreachable giant peak. They didn't even dare to have the slightest thought of resisting. Everyone returned to their seat. Tian Yuehen sat up straight and said, "Everyone should be clear about Master Hun Kuei's order, right?" "Yes." Everyone responded. Tian Yuehen was the leader of this matter and the 5 sect masters made the decision together. The power of 40 tribulation stage experts couldn't be underestimated. However, only half of these 40 people were loyal to the third heaven. The other half were unwilling to surrender and were controlled by the third heaven's soul formation. For example, the only sect master among the 8 sects who wasn't willing to listen to the third heaven's soul formation, Lord Ling Yi. Tian Yuehen's gaze became incomparably sharp. He said, "Then let's act according to the plan." The 40 crossing calamity stage self-cultivators quickly walked out of the courtyard. Everyone stepped into the void and disappeared. The whereabouts of these tribulation stage experts were erratic. Ordinary cultivators couldn't see where they were, but they could pay attention to the movements of the crowd at any time. In a mountain stream 1,000 miles away from the extreme immortal Rift Valley, sword marks were everywhere and rugged rocks were everywhere. Clearly, people had fought here before. Gu Yitian's gaze was filled with fighting spirit as he looked at the lazy Shimen Wuji and Wan. He didn't leave for even a moment. Shimen Wuji yawned helplessly and said, "Don't look. I won't fight you now." "I know." Gu Yitian simply replied. "I also don't want to fight you in the future," Shimen Wuji said again. Gu Yitian didn't seem to hear Shimen Wuji's words. He was a battle maniac. The stronger someone was, the more he wanted to challenge them. Whether it was Shimen Wuji or Wan, when he saw them this time, he found that these 2 people had already surpassed him. "You've reached the Grand Ascension stage?" Gu Yitian indifferently asked. Wan sat on the pine tree by the mountain stream with her long legs resting on the branch. Her gauze dress was casually covering her body, and her skin was faintly discernible. With such a devastatingly beautiful woman lying on the branch in such a casual posture, any man would be unable to help but let their imagination run wild. But Gu Yitian didn't. He wasn't interested in Wan's graceful figure. Every time Wan saw Gu Yitian, she felt very bored. This battle maniac, even if she stood naked in front of him, he would still kill her and fight to his heart's content. Facing Gu Etienne's question, Wanwan smiled and said, "You don't need to worry too much. The two of us are different from you. At least I'm very envious that you haven't reached the Grand Ascension stage yet." Envious of me? You two Grand Ascension stage cultivators are envious of me, a person who hasn't reached the Grand Ascension stage yet? Gu Etienne's voice was cold, mixed with a trace of anger. It seemed that he was annoyed because of being teased. Wanwan shook her head and said, "The two of us have to pay a price to reach the Grand Ascension stage. Think about it, the two of us can only use one domain ability together, but after you comprehend your own domain ability in the future, you can use your domain ability alone. Who do you think is better?" "What does this mean?" Gu Etienne frowned. Shimin Wuji opened his fan and said, "It means that if we want to exert the strength of the Grand Ascension stage in the future, we can only use it together. Once we fight alone, Wanwan and I can't use our domain ability." "Why?" Gu Etienne asked. Shimin Wuji said bitterly, "It's Wanwan's decision that ruined our future. I didn't intend to reach the Grand Ascension stage so quickly." Wanwan rolled her eyes at Shimin Wuji and said, "Do you think I want to be with you every day in the future? Isn't it for the overall situation? Speak clearly." Gu Etienne still didn't understand why Shimin Wuji and Wanwan actually reached the Grand Ascension stage so quickly. Simply speaking, according to the normal cultivation speed, even if we want to comprehend our own domain ability, with our talent, it will take us at least several months or even a year. Unfortunately, for the profound immortal quota, we have no choice but to fuse our domain ability with the old man's guidance. Wanwan said, "Isn't this good?" Gu Etienne asked. Shimin Wuji somewhat regretfully continued, "Of course it's not good. After fusing our domain ability, we will use the yin and yang power in our body as the source. This also means that we won't have the opportunity to comprehend other domains by ourselves. Originally, we planned to wait until we both comprehend our own domain ability before fusing it. This way, Wanwan and I can use 3 domains together. But time waits for no one. Now we can only use one domain together." Gu Etienne was silent for a moment and said, "This is a loss." "Nonsense, otherwise why would Wanwan and I sigh? What's not ours is not ours in the end." Shimin Wuji continuously waved his evil nether fan and countless petals scattered from his evil nether fan, fluttering in the air. He looked somewhat sad. "Then what are we waiting for?" Gu Etienne asked. Wanwan waved the gauze in her hand and changed into a relatively more comfortable position and said, "Of course we are waiting for tomorrow. At this time, won't we be surrounded by a group of damned little white ghosts?" Gu Etienne was pulled here by Shimin Wuji and Wanwan. Otherwise, with Gu Etienne's temperament, he would have already gone to extreme Immortal Rift Valley. "Where are Mu Yu and Qingyan?" Shimin Wuji asked. "They have their own matters, they should be here soon," Gu Etienne said. After a long while, Gu Etienne said, "What is your domain ability?" Shimin Wuji and Wanwan looked at each other and revealed a mysterious smile. "My old man left us this domain ability. To be honest, it is not bad. You have to know that the domain ability used by 2 people together is stronger than the domain ability used by 1 person." Before they finished speaking, Shimin Wuji and Wanwan suddenly frowned. "Who?" Both of them floated up from the treetops on the cliff wall. They floated in the air and vigilantly looked at the cliff above the mountain stream. Chapter 1097. This was a man in plain clothes. His face showed the vicissitudes of life, as if he had experienced many disasters in the world, but he was incomparably determined. There was a simple sword on his back that was wrapped in brown cloth. But that sword was not simple. It was as if the brown cloth was wrapped in a terrifying ferocious beast. If it broke free from the cloth, it would rush out and tear the entire world apart. This man stood there like a sharp divine sword, cutting through the void. No one dared to underestimate his sharpness. "Who are you?" Wan Wan and Shimin Wuji looked at each other and saw a dignified look in each other's eyes. The man in front of them didn't have any cultivation fluctuations, but he gave them a very dangerous impression. Only a master of the Grand Ascension stage could make Wan Wan and Shimin Wuji pay attention to him. If the other party appeared and set off a storm, Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan could accept it, but people who could hide their aura were the most terrifying. When Gu Etian saw this man appear, he was surprised and said, "What are you doing here?" Gu Etian actually knew him. "I came to find you." The middle-aged man with the sword on his back had a similar aura to Gu Etian. Even the sword chi on his body was arrogant and indifferent. Both of them had a sword on their back, and there were no fluctuations of spirit force, but the aura the middle-aged man emitted was obviously stronger than Gu Etian's. "Why are you looking for my little brother Etian?" Wan Wan took a small step forward and blocked Gu Etian behind her. At this time, nothing could happen to Gu Etian. But Gu Etian stopped Wan Wan and said, "His name is Nameless." Shimin Wuji was surprised. "Nameless? You are the nameless swordsman who disappeared in the cultivation world?" There were many types of famous people in the cultivation world. True God's disciple Mu Yu was one type, Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan were notorious, and Nameless Swordsman was another type. Nameless Swordsman was another type. There was a person in the cultivation world whose experience was very similar to Gu Etian's. Or it could be said that there was such a person before Gu Etian, and he was even more famous than Gu Etian. He only had a simple iron sword in his hand. There was nothing strange about it. It was just an ordinary sword, but it was this sword that made the cultivation world remember him. Anyone who could leave a mark on his sword was no longer in this world. The Nameless Swordsman was someone who relied on an ordinary broken sword to make a name for himself. No one knew what his true cultivation was, because he had never been defeated before. If Mu Yu were here, he would definitely be able to recognize this man. Back then, outside of Lanxi City, he and Little Shuai had met this man once. They had even saved the woman this man liked, using her heart to save the woman named Yu Dai. It turns out that Uncle Wu Ming is a Deshang stage cultivator. All of us have underestimated you. Wan Wan sized up the Nameless Swordsman. Such a resolute uncle exuded a mature masculinity in Wan Wan's eyes, which suited Wan Wan's taste very much. However, Wu Ming did not look at Wan Wan at all. Unlike Gu Etian, who was a blockhead who only knew how to fight and did not understand romance, Wu Ming had a woman he liked and was willing to go through fire and water for her. "Come with me," Wu Ming said. "Why?" Gu Etian's eyes were also filled with fighting spirit as he looked at John Doe. He had once received guidance from John Doe, but he also regarded John Doe as his opponent. He only had opponents in his eyes, and surpassing this person who was like him was his goal. "You need my sword intent," Wu Ming said. "I don't need it, and I said that I will definitely defeat you in the future," Gu Etian said. Wu Ming did not seem angry. Instead, he slowly said, "The top 5 extreme immortals on the Supreme Immortal ranking are all at the Deshang stage. How will you defeat them?" The top 5 extreme immortals were all at the 3rd palace, so their cultivation must be at the Deshang stage. There was no doubt about it. "That's none of your business," Gu Etian said without hesitation. "If you don't want to be a burden to others, come with me," Wu Ming said calmly and turned to leave. Become a burden? This was what Gu Etian did not want to see the most. His pride did not allow this to happen. However, in the Supreme Immortal Tablet tomorrow, there would be crouching dragons and hidden tigers. He was not afraid of those tribulation-passing experts, but if he encountered Deshang stage experts, he might really become a burden to others. Gu Etian knew Wu Ming's cultivation, and he also knew what the sword intent he gave him meant. You and the nameless swordsman seem to be fated, Shimen Wuji said in surprise. The two of them were very similar. They had the same personality and the same iron sword, but the nameless swordsman's cultivation was much higher than Gu Etien's. Wan Wan looked at Wu Ming's back as he left. After Wu Ming disappeared, she turned her head and said bitterly, "Don't worry about it. I hope that uncle is here for me." Shimen Wuji said, "In order to get the 9 Xian immortals, we all made concessions, didn't we? Don't forget what our goal is." If Gu Etienne could receive guidance from Wu Ming, his chances of winning would be higher. Gu Etienne hesitated for a moment before following silently. "Ask him if he's single, by the way." Wan Wan did not beat around the bush. In the sky above the eastern side of the extreme Immortal Rift Valley, 2 figures stood above the clouds and looked at the sea of people below. One of them was wearing a dazzling red robe. It was unknown what material the robe was made of, but it seemed to be burning faintly. He stood there, and the entire void seemed to become extremely hot, even about to melt. The other person looked very burly. His strong muscles supported his robe as if it contained explosive power. He stood there, and the void could not bear his weight and was about to collapse. Luo Shang and Xiang Nan. They were both disciples of true gods, but their reputations were not as prominent as Mu Yu's. However, those who truly knew them would not underestimate them. In the end, we still have to face Qingyan and Mu Yu? Xiang Nan's voice was a bit dull, like a heavy rock. The two of them had been avoiding Qingyan and Mu Yu for so long, but in the end they could not avoid it. Golden flames seemed to burn in Luo Shang's eyes as he said, "Qingyan will not let us do that." "I know, but we have no other choice. We cannot stop the Soul Race's plan, so we can only carry out our own plan," Xiang Nan said slowly. Luo Shang glanced indifferently at the cultivators who were whispering to each other with faces full of anticipation. A trace of graveness flowed from the bottom of his eyes. "So, in addition to the threefold palace, our opponents are Qingyan and Mu Yu?" Xiang Nan fell silent. This was something he did not want to face. Qingyan would definitely follow in his master's footsteps and protect all cultivators. Mu Yu only wanted to protect the people he wanted to protect. He clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred. However, regardless of whether it was Qingyan or Mu Yu, their thoughts were different from Xiang Nan and Luo Shang's. "Qingyan knows us too well. He can always find traces of us," Luo Shang said. The two of them had always been elusive. Even the threefold palace could not find them. However, Qingyan was different. He knew his junior brother very well. His sense of smell was unbelievably sharp. He had almost caught up to them several times. A trace of clarity appeared in Xiang Nan's yellow eyes, as if he had recalled something. A rare emotion appeared on his face. He smiled slightly. Qingyan has always been a calm and wise person. It's normal for a senior brother to know his junior brother. Luo Shang did not refute Xiang Nan. He just looked into the distance silently. Some people and some things could not be resolved with just a few words. They had grown up together. Qingyan had taken on the responsibility of being the eldest senior brother. He knew his junior brothers and sisters well. He took care of them in his own way and did not let anything happen to them. Qingyan wanted them to go home to Luochen Mountain. He wanted them to follow his master's wishes and work hard to protect the world. However, in Luo Shang and Xiang Nan's eyes, many things were never that simple. They were no longer the ignorant children of Luochen Mountain. Luochen Mountain stood aloof from worldly affairs and did nothing. However, how could the storms of the outside world be so simple? Many things had changed since their master left. "Has Mu Yu reached the great ascension stage?" Luo Shang asked. Xiang Nan shook his head. "According to the information I gathered, Mu Yu has not reached the great ascension stage yet. However," Xiang Nan did not continue, and Luo Shang did not press the matter. They all understood what this "but" meant. Their youngest junior brother would never act according to common sense. He could always break the rules of the cultivation world in incredible ways, just like how they had always thought that Mu Yu would never do something like massacring a city. However, Dongsha City had been destroyed by Mu Yu. Has Mu Yu also mastered the power of slaughter? An inexplicable sigh appeared on Xiang Nan's indifferent face. In his impression, Mu Yu was a person who loved life very much. She liked the prosperity of life. This kind of person was the least likely to walk towards killing. It was more likely that she would protect this world with Qing Yan. Luo Shang shook his head slightly. His path is different from ours. Even the power of slaughter will eventually be converted into the power of life by him. He knows what he wants. But Qing Yan has never understood what we want, said Xiang Nan. You're wrong. Qing Yan knows what we want, Yi Zichen said. Luo Shang's eyes flickered with a complicated flame. However, he wants us to know what Master wants. What Qing Yan wanted to do was to protect his family and the world that his master wanted to protect when his master left. Xiang Nan's expression changed slightly at the mention of his master. Then, it turned back into a resolute expression. What Master wants is not what we want. Master protected the world, but the world did not treat him well. There is no need for such a world. Xiang Nan and Luo Shang wanted to change the world in their own way. Our greatest enemy is the third palace, but our final opponent is our senior brother and junior brother. This world is really a joke. Xiang Nan and Luo Shang exchanged a look. No matter what, their plan would not change, even if they had to face their senior brother and junior brother in the end. They had their own beliefs to uphold. All they wanted was to create a better world. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.